get started. I'm going to resume recording here. So welcome everybody to the Sierra Nevada AmeriCorps Partnership and Sierra Corps poster session. We're really excited that those of you who are not part of either of those programs are here to see what's going on with our two sort of workforce development programs that we have here at the Alliance. We're going to start off with the Sierra Nevada AmeriCorps Partnership, or SNAP program, presenting on what they've been up to for the last 11 months. And I just want to take a couple of minutes to share a huge amount of gratitude for them. And there are a lot of words that we've heard over the last few days that I'm going to repeat because they absolutely embody what this cohort has done this year. They've been resilient, creative, super adaptable. They've expressed massive amounts of positivity in really, really challenging times, shown compassion and support for each other, including their host site staff, their communities, and the SNAP staff. They've been innovative in how they've managed to accomplish their service plans and shown great determination in creating the world that we need right now. We all kind of are coming to this reality, or maybe have a while back, that business as usual is not going to cut it right now. We need to create a different type of normal. And what I've seen from each and every one of these, through learning how to be data scientists or developing new remote data collection methods and ways of engaging with volunteers, to creating virtual learning opportunities and field guides, creating alumni and organizational support, is that they're ready to pivot when needed. And they've really come to the aid of the organizations and the communities that they're serving. If you'd asked me back in April if I thought we'd get to September with all of our members +3, I'm pretty sure I would have told you no. I did not think that we were going to make it this far intact and with even more robust programs than we started with for a lot of these organizations. I know you all are going into a really uncertain job market, and with that comes a lot of apprehension, some fear, some worries. But I know that each and every one of you have developed some skills that you're not going to necessarily find on a job description anywhere. You've all got grit and grace and compassion, and this is an asset to each and every person and organization that you interact with. So while I know we're going to set you free in the next few days and you're off to do amazing things, my greatest hope is that you all stay in touch, because I really want to see what you do in the world, and I know that you are all going to be part of the change that we so desperately need. So thank you all, SNAP members. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to them to share their version of what they've been up to this year. And we'll start with Michael Burley. Saw you on here, Mike. Are you muted?
Yes. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Good morning, everybody. I had such a stupid fun year. I just made this joke, so I feel ridiculous. I had such a stupid fun year, and I can't believe it's already over. Just imagining you all laughing super hard. Okay, so I'll just jump right in and start by explaining some about my service term, as it was maybe a little bit unusual. My role as environmental educator was split between the South Tahoe Public Utility District, lovingly referred to as STUPID, if you didn't get my hilarious joke just now, and the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. So STUPID is, maybe ironically, one of the most advanced wastewater treatment plants of its size in the country, and that's in part because it's located in the Tahoe Basin, and it faces special requirements with its disposal of treated wastewater. Its drinking water is also fantastic, so #DrinkTahoeTap. TRPA, on the other hand, is a bi-state, federally backed regulatory agency that is modeled on this idea of watershed-based governance. So it's 100% about collaboration between the 2 states, 5 counties, and numerous towns around the lakeshore. And it's done so much to improve environmental protection at Lake Tahoe. So I felt really lucky to have been partnered with these 2 agencies. They're both really dynamic and influential in South Lake and basin-wide. And to clarify, my two roles merged with my responsibilities at the South Tahoe Environmental Education Coalition, called STEEC. Have you guys had enough acronyms yet? So that consists of over 20 nonprofits and agencies dedicated to environmental education for local youth. And it was my role at STEEC that brought those organizations together to support my position. So stepping back a bit to my work at each agency, while at TRPA, I worked with the outreach team to prepare for the 50th anniversary celebrations. I helped make a story map for that. I also created a bike safety outreach video series called Safe Routes to School to help young people gear up for the Bike Challenge Month. You can see that great screen grab there on the left, those awesome videos. I also helped edit and distribute their environmental newspaper, Tahoe In Depth, and wrote a really fun article for it about scuba trash cleanup efforts. Then at Stupid, I worked as part of the water conservation team. I used their water use tracking software to determine which customers were watering on the wrong days of the week. And then I sent notices to them. I sent out thousands of notices via email and snail mail, still works. This direct form of engagement led to a lot of productive and interesting conversations. And one of my biggest takeaways from that is just how conscientious most people are. They really want to do the right thing for conservation. If you can remind them. So that was awesome. I also prepared a virtual garden tour to help highlight various methods of water conservation outdoors. You can scope that photo of that beautiful butterfly on a nice native plant. That's because the largest form of water use in Tahoe is landscape irrigation. So trying to convince people to make the switch from water-thirsty lawns to Tahoe-friendly garden with native drought-tolerant plants is key for that. So the highlight of my year was definitely working with STEEC. Again, that's the South Tahoe Environmental Education Coalition, which serves as a model for this collaborative form of environmental education. Tahoe is a really special place with this high concentration of nonprofits, agencies, businesses, all dedicated to some form of environmental protection and invested in environmental education, but maybe lacking the budget and dedicated staff to tackle these coordinated programs. So STEEC is able to do more than the sum of its parts through collaboration. And I got to be right in the middle of all of it, right in the middle of all these hardworking, talented staff and volunteers, coordinating the meetings, writing the agendas, and just serving as the point person for the coalition. And there's a photo of our Heavenly Snowshoe program, which was our last in-person event. And I'd say the adaptation to virtual learning is stretching STEEC because it's so opposite to this like place-based experiential learning, but new partnerships are coming together and I'm optimistic it'll be stronger afterwards. So yeah, finally, I would just love to thank my site supervisors, Shelly and Victoria. You guys were just so awesome. And of course, Jen Cressy, who taught me so much about gardens. So that was my year. Thank you guys so much.
Just so everyone knows, I'm putting reminders about timing in the chat box to you privately while you're presenting. So keep an eye on that.
That was great. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Mike. And if people have questions for any of our presenters, you're welcome to type them in the chat box. If we have time at the end, we'll address them. So next up, we have Abby.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Yes, okay. So hello, everyone. My name is Abby Evans, obviously. This year, I served as the SNAP COSA Education Coordinator for the Bishop Paiute Tribe down here in Bishop. And the COSA is a 25-acre plot of land that's kind of just been set aside by the Bishop Paiute Tribe just for conservation, really. So it's a really cool thing, just kind of in the middle of Bishop, just 25 acres of green space, essentially. So this year I had the opportunity to work on a variety of projects. I collaborated with a few other government agencies. I monitored like pupfish ponds, which is an endangered species down here. Pre-COVID, I had the opportunity to work with some of the school age groups and get them out into the COSA and just do some environmental education. The project I chose to focus on for this presentation was the pollinator garden restoration, and that was in memory of a late tribal member, and we wanted to do, her name was Polly, so we did the Polly's Pollinator Garden, which was a fun play on words. So, and you can, as you can see in the first three pictures here, we had to go through and just kind of find a spot within the 25 acres of the COSA to figure out light requirements, light requirements, water requirements, things like that, and where we wanted to kind of focus our efforts. So we did the clearing here, and I worked with my site supervisor and then another member of the natural resource team to clear this area. And this is my first time using a chainsaw, so thank you to Snap for providing me that opportunity. And then I also had the opportunity to kind of collaborate with another program within the Environmental Management Office, which was the Food Sovereignty Program, to choose some of the plants that we wanted to put there and then figure out monitoring duties and watering duties. And we really wanted to focus on plants that were culturally appropriate as well as pollinator friendly. If we can go to the next slide. Okay, so here we see just a few of the plants that we decided to put in. We have the Owens Valley checker blooms and the yerba mansa at the bottom. So the checker blooms are a really cool plant because they're endangered, and there's only about 42 occurrences within the 75-mile Owens River drainage. And yeah, and they only grow in Inyo County, so that's really cool. And I had the opportunity to also work with that plant in another facet and transplant some of the plants within the COSA and monitor those. And then the yerba mansa is also a culturally appropriate plant. The roots can be used to crush and make tea for medicinal uses. And then we also have kind of the rougher picture of the pollinator garden post-transplant. And FSP, which was the Food Sovereignty Program, and we coordinated, like I said, with monitoring and watering duties for that. And that'll be another kind of project that the next SNAP member can kind of take off where I left and hopefully expand the pollinator garden and also just kind of get it growing a little bit more lush, I guess. So yeah, that was the pollinator garden restoration. And like I said, there was quite a few other projects that, like everyone had to do, kind of pivot and figure out how to do everything virtually. But like Michael said, I'd like to thank Snap and my site supervisors. And it was a cool year learning about just different things and really getting to help out. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Oops. And if you want to learn more about what Abby's up to or stay in touch with her, here's her contact info.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Sydney.
Hello. So I'm just going to talk about what I've been working on since January, since I've had an interesting year and getting transferred in January. And so I worked between two organizations, between Bear Yuba Land Trust and Sierra Nevada Alliance. And with Bear Yuba Land Trust, I helped with updating their trail signage, which started out with going on to the trails and determining which signs were needed for what kind of, like if they needed arrows or trail mile markers or stuff like that. And then we also had a Adopt a Trail program, which I was helping with the layout of what kind of wording would go where. And so that was a big part of what I've been working on since January. And then once COVID started, we had to rearrange some of the work plan that I was doing. So we were looking at the kiosks one day during a staff meeting. And so I started laying out and creating a uniform layout for all the kiosks. And we were starting out with just 5 of the kiosks that we had so far, which were at 3 preserves and 2 of our trails. And they included like updating the missions, updating the trail maps or the maps of the preserves, potentially adding like kids section to add some fun to it, and adding pamphlet holders so that if people want to check out more information on Bear Yuba Land Trust, they could. And so that's what I've been up to with Bear Yuba Land Trust. And then on the next slide, I have been helping Sierra Nevada Alliance with their monthly webinars, where I would be helping them reach out to professionals within the Sierra Conservation. And we would start with trying to come up with ideas of what kind of topics to come up with, what our audience were for who would want to watch. And then during the webinar, I would record the webinars and introduce the presenters, and then read off any questions that were in the chat and try to engage the community within the Alliance audience. And it was just a fun year since January. I know I did this really short, but
Awesome. Thank you, Sydney. And yeah, you've juggled a lot this year. So thanks for sharing with us. And if anybody wants to stay in touch with Sydney, here's her contact info too. Got some appreciations in the chat, Sydney. I don't know if you can see.
I did see that.
Okay. Next up, we have Amanda.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Amanda, and I'm a SNAP member serving for Tahoe Resource Conservation District as an outreach specialist. So Tahoe RCD is a grant-funded local agency that works all around the Lake Tahoe Basin, implementing an array of conservation projects. And a lot of my time at Tahoe RCD was spent with the Tahoe Network of Fire Adapted Communities, which connects Tahoe residents to fire districts and land management agencies, and educates residents and visitors about wildfire. And so my role at the Tahoe Network was to sort of implement outreach and education strategies. And as with many other organizations, a lot of those strategies definitely changed due to COVID. And so a big resource, and we did a lot of things, but something that I really wanted to focus on to take advantage of the virtual situation was the use of social media. And I very quickly discovered that social media can actually be a really effective education tool, especially during times of COVID. And so my biggest goals when implementing the Tahoe Network's social media strategy were to give wildfire preparedness a platform to be sort of this community connection and to use photos and graphics to empower and encourage residents and visitors to prepare for and prevent wildfire. And so on the top there are just a couple graphics I made on Adobe Illustrator, and they were shared by fire safe councils and other organizations, and even got statewide and countrywide distribution, which was really cool. And they were paired with informational newsletters and used as like interactive Instagram information bits. So that was a really fun process, just trying to find different ways to engage with people. And another social media I used, or another social media tool I used was paid Facebook advertisements with a specific audience targeting. And I did the bulk of that during a July campaign called Lake Tahoe Wildfire Awareness Month. And so what I did, and it's almost troublesome to me that Facebook lets you do this as an organization, but for fire prevention messaging, I targeted visitors by posting an ad about campfires or barbecues to display for people whose hometown is not listed as Tahoe and whose location changed to Tahoe from cities like Sacramento or the Bay. So really specific targeting for really specific messages. And I also posted ads about defensible space, home hardening, or neighborhood preparedness to display for residents, renters, and homeowners in Tahoe. So definitely made a distinction about who was seeing which ads. And yes, Facebook does know this information about you. And yes, it's terrifying. And I don't personally agree with it, but I think that if this technology exists, the more that we use it for good information, the more we can cloud out sort of the bad stuff. So these ads at the bottom, they were created by the Take Care Tahoe campaign, and they were used for our Lake Tahoe Wildfire Awareness Month campaign. So it was really exciting to sort of have this collaboration. All right, so next slide. So kind of the big question is, does any of this work? And without proper market research, it's hard to know if people are digesting the information and if that's like translating to people taking action because of it. But what we do know is how many people saw the information, who it reached and who they are. And so that's useful too. So during the Lake Tahoe Wildfire Preparedness Month campaign, our Facebook page, which is Tahoe Living with Fire, by the way, plug if anyone wants to look at it, increased by 297% the views, and that's just the amount during the month, during like when all of the paid ads were circulating. The likes increased by 300%, our reach increased by 163. And that's the amount of people who see the ads, and our engagement, which is the amount of people who interact with the ads, increased by 188% during the month. So we were really happy to see that at the very least people were seeing and engaging with the content. But again, it's hard to tell if people take that information and change their habits. So yeah, and additionally, in the last year of implementing the strategy, overall, the Facebook following increased by 27%, and the Instagram increased by 226. And so to me, that's super exciting because at the very least, amidst people seeing posts of their friends and pictures of food and dog photos and landscapes, that amount of people are also going to be seeing content about how to prepare for wildfire, which feels really relevant to me right now. And so I think amidst the digital age, it's meaningful and it's exciting. But yeah, I've overall have learned so much. I kind of went into this year without any of these skills. And so it's been really humbling and exciting and fun to learn new skills and learn new ways to reach people amidst kind of this digital age and amidst the challenges of COVID. So overall, I had really great site supervisors and mentors, and super valuable year for me. And I'll be staying another year, which is exciting. Yeah, that's all. If you have any questions, that's my email.
Thanks, Amanda. We're really excited to have you staying and continuing to make such a big impact in the Tahoe Basin and beyond. And you have a lot of appreciation in the text in the chat box. So check that out. All right, next up we have 3 members from Turk, Bailey, Elise, and Anne.
Hello. My name is Elise. My name is Anne. I'm Bailey. And we work with the UC Davis Tahoe Environmental Research Center, which is based in Incline Village, Nevada, and Tahoe City, California, around the Lake Tahoe area. And the research center does a lot of research on the lake, obviously, but we work with the education and outreach team within the center. Next slide.
So I'm going to start off by talking about our Science in Place campaign. Before the pandemic, we offered free docent-led tours of the Tahoe Science Center, but once the pandemic hit, we had to close the Science Center, and we still don't know when we're going to get to reopen it. But we knew the key to staying relevant in the community was to have a stronger presence online, so we came up with the Science in Place campaign, which started off on social media, but it quickly grew to producing a variety of educational videos. The first ones were our virtual docent videos, where I would meet a docent somewhere outside around the lake, and I would film them sharing their favorite Tahoe fun facts and stories. And this was a really great way to keep our docents engaged both with us and a really good way to produce fun environmental education videos for the community. We also created a Tahoe Science Center virtual tour series where our staff filmed themselves going over exhibits in the Science Center. And if you want to check out any of these fun educational videos, you can subscribe to our UC Davis Tahoe YouTube channel. Next slide, please.
One of the programs that I have worked on and managed are the 2 demonstration gardens that we have, one in Incline Village and one in Tahoe City, which are typically a really great space to bring the community together to learn about lake-friendly gardening practices. But with COVID hitting, we needed to pivot and make those workshops virtual. A lot of people in the community were upset because it's a fun event where people get to come together for a potluck and share all of their different experiences, because it is a challenge definitely to garden at elevation and in this dry, acidic soil environment. But the collaborators that we work with on that were able to partner and continue to deliver this program through Zoom and through a virtual workshop series, which was really exciting to get to work on and partner with those really, really dedicated and intelligent people who are very, very good gardeners in comparison to my skill set in that. But it was really fantastic. We got so much positive feedback and actually increased our participation by 300% based on what we're typically able to host in our in-person spaces, and being able to have people go back and revisit that information. It was really important for the skill set building and making sure that lake-friendly practices, so people that are gardening in the area are not taking and making additional impacts to our watershed environment here. Additionally, part of that study is a phenology study that we do at the research center, so tracking what species actually perform well in the basin here, and being able to continue to collect that data even though COVID is throwing a lot of things off was really, really great to see it come together. Additionally, we've been able to do some programs through the summer in person with following strict COVID safety protocols. And as educators know, all over the basin right now, it's the challenge to see students have learning gaps starting to develop when they're in this virtual learning environment. So even though we had a very short window with our nice summer weather, that we were able to deliver both a summer science camp as well as a literacy program to some students in the Tahoe Basin. Those were both really, really rewarding things to be able to still have some in-person experience teaching. Next slide, please.
So this is kind of a look at the future of what we'll be doing for education here at Turk. You can see those top two photos. Bailey and I are teaching in person last fall, and that was going to be one of the biggest parts of our job here as SNAP members. And so we were pretty bummed when we had to cancel our annual Science Expo, but we ended up turning some of those into Bailey's Science and Place campaign. And right now we're working on turning our field trips into virtual field trips. And so we have several developed already. The ones here, you see the one on the left is a climate change field trip that has been really successful in person. And we're using the Google Suite, which is what the classrooms in our area are using for their students online, to create that same kind of data collection experience virtually. And then on the right, we have a food web activity that we like to do with students. And you can see on that whiteboard, usually we have them all come up and it gets kind of crazy, and we explain the difference between a food chain and a food web and how much more interconnected they are. And then below that, you can see we'll be transitioning it to a Jamboard, which is a really great online tool. And we really just want to make sure that these virtual field trips are available to all students, and we're really excited to roll them out this fall. So thank you guys so much. And that's just a small sample of what we do here at Turk. So thanks for listening to us. And thank you to our site supervisors as well. They were really wonderful.
We're excited to stay another year and get to do this another year.
Thank you all. I think it's so cool that all three of you are staying. I think you're going to take such momentum with you into your next term. All right, next up is Brooke.
Hi, everyone, and good morning. My name is Brooke, and I was fortunate enough to serve with the Sierra Nevada Alliance this year as their recruitment, capacity, and outreach coordinator. This was a brand new AmeriCorps position for this year, and I basically got to be an ambassador for the SNAP program, which is really easy to do. My main projects this year focused on recruiting new members for our spring, half-term, and full-term positions, running our new SNAP Alumni Committee, and diving into some diversity, equity, and inclusion work within our program and the Alliance. So before COVID hit, I was going out in-person events like college career fairs, tabling at events like the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. Once we were in quarantine, I had to move all of that online. I was able to put together a virtual employee panel with 4 of our current members who are awesome and amazing and all had different roles and experiences to share about SNAP. I also attended a lot of virtual career fairs and job fairs, which, to be honest, were not as fun. One of the more fun parts of my job was being able to create and design new outreach materials and graphics. I did a lot of social media, developing our Takeover Tuesdays, where members got to highlight their host site and service. I also started highlighting our alumni through our snapshot posts. The alumni board was brand new when I stepped in. It's now a mixture of SNAP staff, alumni, and current members. And the goal is to create a community of past and present members, build these partnerships to advocate for participation in our program, and then offer professional and personal support to our members during their service and transition after. It started with inviting our Tahoe area alumni to attend our graduation party last summer. Since then, our alumni have helped host a graduate school panel, attend our EDI workshop series, review and offer feedback to member resumes. They were a huge help this year in our interview process, which isn't new, but we had over 300 applicants this year and had to interview 200 of them, so they were a huge support in that. We were able to host an in-person event this winter, doing a happy hour in Nevada City during the Film Fest, and that was really awesome. We have a huge alumni presence in Nevada City, and other members came from like Davis and SAC, and were able to have a beer and network with our current members. So that was really cool. Another part of my role that was a little more behind the scenes was helping develop our diversity, equity, and inclusion best practices within our recruitment efforts. So I revised and updated all our recruitment language on our position descriptions, our website, our job postings, and then our outreach materials. I did a lot of heavy research into other environmental organizations that had already started this process of reviewing and creating their own action plan toward a more inclusive and accessible environment. We were able to hold a 3-part EDI training series with SNAP members, people from our alumni board, and then staff from the Alliance, which I hope will become a mandatory part of SNAP orientation. We also developed an EDI committee within our alumni board, which has since merged into a bigger committee with the Alliance staff. This work is probably the hardest to reflect on since a lot of our efforts won't be seen or felt in some time, which is no different than restoring a meadow or educating a group of kids. So I know this work takes a lot of time and commitment, and I hope I was able to leave a small positive impact towards the future. That's it.
Thank you so much, Brooke. Yeah, you started some pretty amazing things and are leaving some big shoes to fill. Thank you very, very much. And this is Brooke's adorable dog, Mooney. Next up, we have Andrea.
Hi, everybody. I'm Andrea Jo Johnson, and I was at the El Dorado and Georgetown Divide Resource Conservation District, and I was the conservation assistant there. I did a lot of things at the RCD, including outreach, education, and fieldwork, but I wanted to focus my presentation on education because I had no experience in teaching young students before this, and I absolutely loved it. I always hope it's part of my career, or at least the volunteering that I do in the future. I really, really liked it. So the 2 projects that I'm going to focus on are the SAGE Map Contest, and SAGE stands for Surveyors, Architects, Geologists, and Engineers. And it's an organization that created this annual countywide map contest. And then the other one I'll be talking about is Ag in the Classroom. And it's a really cool program that strives to educate the the community about how important agriculture is in our daily lives. So these were both in-person things that I did at the beginning of my term, and I just found them to be super fun. So the first one I'll talk about is the Sage Map Contest. If you could go to the next slide, please. So I did a lot for the Sage Map Contest. I just got done finishing everything with it. Usually you'd be done sooner, but like everything had to be done online and it was a lot harder. But we were able to do a lot of things in person. I was able to teach in the classes, and the maps were hung in the county building. It took up 2 stories of the county building. There were 800 maps. It was awesome. And these maps are all hand-drawn, but I got to go into the classrooms and teach kids what makes a good map. And but my favorite ones were the ones that were the like open category, where they got to be creative and do whatever they wanted. This map that is shown here is one of those maps. And then I had to hand deliver all of the prizes because we couldn't have our typical award ceremony. So that was a big job. And there's a picture of Lucinda Spring with her cute little ribbon, and she's adorable. So it was actually really fun to see everybody in person and one-on-one. We were not able to do the award ceremony, so everything was online, and I really wanted to recognize all those kids who put in such hard work into their maps. So they have, they're all up on the Sage website, and I created a newspaper article that are online, so those are shown there. And then this bar graph shows all of the schools that participated and how many students participated, and then the different colors are the different grades of the students. So that was the Sage Map Contest. If you could go to the next slide, please. And then, so then I worked with Ag in the Classroom, and I'm still working with them. And it's a really cool program that pairs, well, so I worked with the Fields of Learning program, and it pairs schools with different local farms, and each school goes to 3 different farms throughout the year. So I got to teach about the water cycle, water filtration, and bats, and this was super fun. I love teaching outside, and all the kids loved it too because everything's super hands-on. And I'm also currently working with them to edit and create curriculum, so that'll be a great way to end my term. So I had a really great year, and I have also been doing education now virtually a little bit, and that's been keeping me going and motivated in this virtual world we live in. So I'm really grateful that I can still work on that. But yeah, and thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Andrea. And you also did something you didn't highlight here that maybe was just your own personal project, but I loved seeing your wildflower guide that you made, that you shared like via Facebook, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
really
it was
a cool additional project.
It was on the RCD Facebook too, but it wasn't as big, but I did love doing that too.
Nice. All right, next up we have Lexi.
Hi everybody, my name is Lexi Hager, and I spent this last year as doing education and outreach work in a split position, working with both the Sierra Nevada Alliance and the Sierra Club, and specifically the Tahoe area group of the Sierra Club. So I think hopefully at this point you're all fairly familiar with the Sierra Nevada Alliance and some of their programs, so I won't spend too long going into what they do. But included their mission here, protecting and restoring Sierra lands, water, wildlife, and communities. And some of the highlights of the work I did with them was a lot of bigger outreach and education through events like the Wild and Scenic Film Festival and this conference. working on the Wild and Scenic Film Festival was super cool. We all got to go to Nevada City and watch some of the films. So I helped to create the program that we decided on and plan some of the logistics. And then coronavirus happened. And all of a sudden we had to figure out how to take the Wild and Scenic Film Festival virtual, which was interesting to figure out. But I think it ended up being a really cool event because when it was virtual, we were kind of able to take it even outside of the Tahoe Basin and reach people who might not have been able to come attend an event here in South Lake. And then I spent a lot of the summer working on planning for this conference, helping prepare the sessions and putting it out on social media and posting it on regional calendars, trying to get people to come. So thank you all for attending. It's awesome to see so many people here. And I worked very closely with Sydney Tishner on getting a lot of items for the silent auction and setting that up virtually as well. So please check that out. I go to the next slide, please. I also worked with the Sierra Club, especially with the Tahoe area group, which is here in the Tahoe Basin. It draws members from both the Motherlode chapter, which is based in California, and the Toyabe chapter, which is based in Nevada. So it's one of the few Sierra Club groups in the country that draws its members from multiple chapters in multiple states in order to really reach everyone around the lake. And a lot of my work with them was increasing outreach both to members and to the general public, trying to recruit people to join the Sierra Club and get involved with their events and future volunteering opportunities. So I attached a couple posters here that I made for some of the outreach events we had early in the year when we could still do in-person events. We invited super awesome speakers like Dr. Rick Hopkins and Sarah Hawkins-Smith to come talk about mountain lion behavior and the birds of the Tahoe Basin, to just give cool educational presentations to try and encourage people to engage with the Sierra Club. Another part of my work with the Sierra Club was getting involved with a young adult coalition on tobacco control that the Sierra Club was involved in launching last year. That was a really cool part of my year. I got to attend monthly meetings. We went to a retreat that's pictured here and helped create some educational materials on the environmental effects and history of smoking and vaping, especially litter, which is a huge issue in watersheds like Lake Tahoe Basin. So I got to present some of that to our retreat and to some Sierra Club members. And I'm super excited to say that I can return for a second year next year. I found this year really rewarding. It was so great, so glad to work with people like Sarah and Lynn and Laurel and Jose from the Sierra Club. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lexi, and we're really excited to have you back again for a second term. Next up is Shannon.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Shannon Hedge. I am one of 3 SNAP members at South Yuba River Citizens League, and I've been serving the past 11 months as the Education and Outreach Coordinator. I did a lot of stuff during my year, as most people did. So I have this just focused on how we pivoted to online community engagement in response to the pandemic. Just as many people had to do, we all had to move everything online since we could no longer table at events or educate people in person. So I just wanted to look at the 2 parts with the education and the outreach that we did here. So briefly, virtual engagement since March by the numbers. All the stats that I have done here are from the beginning of March to the end of August, which is about roughly how long the stay-at-home order has lasted. So our Facebook page likes have increased by 189 over this course of this time period. And so those are individual people that are liking the page. Our Instagram followers have increased by almost 1,300 since March, which is a huge jump. And our Twitter followers have gone up by 103 people, and our monthly website views average around 34,300 at this point in time. A lot of that is because of the efforts that we have put forth that I will talk about now. So on the education side of things, Ray Lubitz, the education manager at Circle, and I wanted to help out our local educators with offering any kind of hands-off environmental education that they could do with distance learning. And so thus the Yuba Watershed Education Collaborative was born in conjunction with Sierra Streams Institute and Shady Creek Outdoor School. And so we had a few offerings that we used there that were housed on our environmental education resource page that I developed onto our website. Since its development, it's received 204 views. And that was just a place where we had put all of the education resources that we could find anywhere, and then included links. So essentially it was a one-stop shop for parents, students, anything like that to find lessons they could do at home. We also did weekly video lessons where we would switch off between which organization was making the weekly video lesson that they were hosted on Shady Creek Outdoor School's YouTube channel. They averaged 6 engagements and 124 views per video. And then finally, we hosted Ask a Scientist Live, which is my favorite thing out of those that we did. And that was every Friday from April through the end of the school year last year. We had a different scientist on Circle's Facebook Live account talking about their specialty or whatever topic of their choosing. For example, I did the first one and did mine about herpetology and had people asking me questions and I answered them in live time. And so those averaged 109 engagements and 581 views. On the other half of the thing with outreach, we had 2 campaigns that we tried to use to increase our online engagement. And that was the Yuba River Photo Contest and then hashtag What in the Watershed Wednesdays. And so the photo contest was just a thing that we launched in April. For about 2 weeks, people could submit photos using hashtag Yuba Photo Contest. And then we allowed people to vote on those. And the winner was featured on our social media, which I believe was a picture of a dog at the river. And so on Instagram and Facebook, we had about the same amount of engagements at 66 and 60 respectively. And the amount of people reached on Instagram was 864 and on Facebook was 306. So we got pretty far. For What in the Watershed, that was just something that we did every week where we posted some really cool photo that I had from somebody else or somebody sent me or something I took about animals, plants, what have you that occurred in our watershed with a handful of fun facts. Those consistently performed very well and were frequently the highest performing Instagram post each month with an average of 113 engagements per month and 1,123 people reached per month on Instagram and 59 engagements on Facebook and 560 people reached on Facebook as well per month. So both of these things are something that we are going to hopefully continue to upkeep, even moving out of stay-at-home order. I'm going to be staying another year and I'm really happy about that. So hopefully I'll be able to keep these things up. And I would love to thank my supervisor and co-supervisor, Daniel Belshi and Ray Lubitz. I'm super stoked to work with y'all again next year.
Thanks, Shannon. We're really excited to have you back as well. Next up is Lauren.
Hi all, my name is Lauren Herbine and I have been working with Trout Unlimited in Truckee as their Sierra field technician. Trout Unlimited is a national organization, but our Truckee office is mainly focused on the Sierras. So we work from all the way from the border with Oregon down to the southern tip of the Sierras near Sequoia. We also dip into Nevada and do some work there. So our projects this summer have really spanned that full range of the Sierras, but one of the projects that I'm going to highlight was working down in Sequoia National Forest. So down there, I was helping Sequoia National Forest prioritize roads for decommissioning in the Fish Creek drainage. Fish Creek and its tributaries are some of the few streams that contain golden trout, which is a state species of special concern, the Kern Plateau salamander, and the Sierra Madre yellow-legged frog. So this watershed also has tens of miles of roads that are deemed unnecessary and are a consistent source of sediment to these important creeks and meadows. So excess sediment causes increased turbidity and fills in spawning gravels, both of which add a lot of stress to fish. So since funding is limited, the Sequoia hydrologist wanted to know where the highest contributions of sediment were coming from these roads that were deemed unnecessary. So with a GIS layer of roads, I started acquiring data, staring at maps, and familiarizing myself with the environment from behind my laptop. This all happened in the spring. Next slide. So to orient you, the Fish Creek watershed is in the northeast corner of Sequoia National Forest. It's bordered by the Golden Trout Wilderness to the north, the South Sierra Wilderness to the east, and the Domeland Wilderness to the south. And Fish Creek is a tributary to the South Fork of the Kern River, which drains 980 miles of relatively high and dry portion of the southern Sierra Nevadas. Next slide, please. So to prepare for fieldwork, I combined two previously completed GIS analyses. One was by the Forest Service and one was by Trout Unlimited. I then added known fish and frog presence, whether the nearest stream or meadow was designated as a priority Sierra meadow, and whether the road was redundant with an off-highway vehicle trail, which is an OHV trail. This produced a prioritized roadmap that I was then able to use during my 10 days of surveys. So while I was in the Fish Creek drainage, my field partner and I would walk or drive a road looking for any places that road-produced sediment was leaving the roadbed. This could be in a place it was engineered to do that, such as a leadoff ditch or a shotgun culvert. It could also be leaving the roadbed in places that was not planned, such as a broken berm or a sloughing fill slope. And so whether it was clearly engineered to carry water and sediment or not, we followed these pour points from the road to the point where the sediment would settle out. This could be a flat forest floor with a layer of duff, or it could be directly into a stream or meadow. And it was these cases that we were most interested in, which was where was road produced sediment directly entering hydrologically active areas. So from these surveys, I was able to write a qualitative description of each road along with recommendations for decommissioning from our observations. Oh, next slide, please. And so I broke these up into two categories: highest watershed benefit and easy mileage. So highest watershed benefit is exactly what it sounds like: roads that, if taken offline, would greatly reduce the amount of sediment entering the system. And easy mileage roads are roads that are already inaccessible, haven't been used in decades, lead to nowhere, and/or would be very simple to decommission. So whether or not they're contributing significant sediment loads, taking them offline would be easier, and therefore more road miles could be decommissioned. So the next step is taking the georeference data we collected and producing a quantitative analysis of where these sediment inputs are coming from. So on the left, you can see some of my interim GIS analyses I produced. In the center of the screen is a screenshot from the Survey 123 collector I created for data collection, and some examples of problems we ran into. And on the right is a screen grab of all of our data points and an example of the types of observations we would make. Oh, so I'm out of time, but if you have any questions, I would be happy to take them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lauren. And if anybody's interested in learning a bit more about some of the work that Trout Unlimited is doing, they're going to be presenting in a session just after this at 11:45, I believe.
It's so weird.
All right, next up is the SRT trio, Sneha, Daisy, and Grace.
Hi. Can, oh. Hi everyone, my name is Sneha Kumar and I'm the education technician at SRT and I've been here for the past 2 years. So as the education technician, most of my time has been spent supporting the education and volunteer department with field trips and volunteer days, special events, other programming and outreach. So a lot of my time is spent working with students and members of the general public, teaching them about the natural and social history of the area, as well as about the native plants, animals, and surrounding environment. The first picture on this slide is from a community biodiversity festival that some of our environmental partners put on to introduce more minorities to the outdoors. In this, one of the students that we work with often, Jose, in the blue poncho, is teaching other students about frogs in the area. Some of the other pictures under students and volunteers are from some field trips and volunteer events that I help support. And that second to last picture with the kites is from a wildflower walk at one of our preserves that Rachel was actually able to attend as well. And that's just one example of the different types of special events that we put on for the public as well. The majority of my time is spent working on field trips and an educational program that SRT puts on called Earth Academy. The first picture under field trips is from a trip that I was actually able to coordinate and lead for an after-school group teaching students how to do nature and outdoor photography. As you can see, one of our longtime supporters and a pro photographer, John Greening, was actually able to come to the field trip as well and teach the students some of his tips and tricks for photography outdoors. Earth Academy is the biggest longtime project that I was able to work on. It's a 10-month internship created and run by the education coordinator at SRT, Sam Weiser. The focus of the program is to allow students to shadow and learn from professionals and gain hands-on experience in the field. In this first picture, you can again see Jose, this time leading some members of the public and some NCCC crew members that we hosted this year through a module on soil health. In the second photo, you can see two of our students, Esmeralda and Princesa, learning about traps and catch and release monitoring during a field trip that we took to the Carrizo Plains, where they were able to shadow two of our wildlife biologists and learn about their jobs. These are just some examples of the different field trips and educational events that I was able to support SRT on in the past 2 years. On to Daisy.
Hello, I am Daisy Mack. As the volunteer coordinator at SRT, I have been involved with lots of community outreach through email, expos, career fairs. We've reached many different people. Coordinating with our conservation department, I have helped set up many different restoration days on our preserves. In this picture, there's a group of us helping out repot plants at our native plant nursery. For a while, we ran 4 regularly scheduled volunteer days, twice a month at our nursery. Once a month, we would run a stewardship day at Kawia Oaks Preserve. And the 4th event was Discovery Day at one of our other preserves, Blue Oak Ranch Preserve, where restoration projects were often partnered with exploration. I've tried to stay in touch with volunteers personally to keep them engaged and returning. Something else I've done for volunteer engagement is send out volunteer newsletters to highlight the hard work they've done for us. Here in Visalia, everything seems to revolve around agriculture. SRT has many connections to the ag area, or ag in the area, from board members to conservation easements on farmland. This is a part of the reason the outdoor education program here is so important. Our Earth Academy program gets select students out into the field and they get hands-on experience educating members of the public on the importance of soil health through our soil carbon event. We were also able to train this group on water usage, pollution, and aquatic life for our Trout in the Classroom program. Unfortunately, that was cut short due to the pandemic, but the training was really fun. In the image here, I'm helping some young students with a field trip project that we ran on our Flagstaff Preserve, KOP. I was also able to help create new field trip programming and write new curriculum for these grade school field trips. We've also run many community events, as Sneha touched on, including our educational wildflower walk and a biodiversity event through a partnership with Alonzia Ecologista Here at SRT, I really have been exposed to a little bit of everything. Volunteer events, education, conservation. With the conservation crew, I have helped with planting natives and removing invasives. I've helped them monitor restoration sites and have been able to help in our native plant nursery. Snea and I are pictured here with our not so trusty but oh so handy UTV in one of our meadows. I'll turn it over to Grace now to highlight some of our conservation projects.
Hi, my name is Grace Van Can, and I have been the Lands Conservation Technician at SRT for the past year, and I have worked on many different projects. I spent a large majority of my time at KOP, which is Kauai Oaks Preserve. It's about 20 minutes from the SRT office in Visalia and is one of our most visited preserves. Here I worked on 5 different projects in addition to invasive species management throughout the preserve, both within project sites and independently. The most aggressive invasive species population that we addressed was Centaurea solstitialis, which is yellow star thistle. Yellow star thistle is one of many plants, native or non, that I was unfamiliar with when I first moved to Visalia. 2 of the things that helped me with my plant identification skills are the Kauai Oaks KOP plant guide and any one of our visits to the native plant nursery at Dry Creek Preserve. The KOP plant guide is a quick index of native and non-native plants at KOP that I worked on consistently throughout the year when field work was scant or kind of inaccessible. The field guide includes photos, plant family, native or non-native delineation, and invasive status, blooming period, common names, and then indicates any relevant lookalike species. The native plant nursery at Dry Creek Preserve is another place where we would hold volunteer days and the odd plant sale. Oftentimes, we would collect cuttings from our preserves and propagate them at the nursery. Pictured to the right, you can see SNAP alumni Claire and I proudly posing with our Tetris load of plants, ready to head out to a preserve for another volunteer day. We frequently utilize plants from the nursery at our plot at the Wood Lake Botanical Garden down the road from Dry Creek Preserve and in restoration and mitigation projects. Mitigation projects refers to any of our projects wherein we were contracted out to reduce the negative impact of a project, usually construction, when it destroys natural resources. The bridge mitigation site at KOP is a dual site mitigating for 2 different constructions. I monitor bridge mitigation bi-weekly to record the progress of the sites and to ensure that we are doing all that we can to meet the end goal for each project. I also maintain the site, which included checking irrigation lines, invasive management within the site, mulching when necessary, and hopefully effectively deterring pests. The first photo under mitigation, management, and maintenance, mitigation, maintenance, and monitoring is a glimpse of bridge mitigation on a dewy winter morning. At a few of our preserves, and especially at KOP, there's a large ground squirrel and gopher populations, and they are so pesky and annoying and difficult to deal with. So to protect sprouting acorns and taproots, we plant seedlings within gopher cages in tree tubes. The gopher cages are buried in the ground except for about an inch that overlaps with the blue tubes. And we found that this is the most effective method of keeping our plants safe from hungry critters. The blue tubes serve a dual purpose, both to promote healthy growth and to protect the seedlings from mechanical damage from wind and really intense sun and things like that, and from wildlife browsing. We also use blue tubes within the Partners Project, which is a riparian woodland restoration project at KOP that is funded through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services Partners for Fish and Wildlife Program, granted to us in June 2019. The Partners Project is in an area that has already undergone an intensive forest health treatment program, and as such, one of the goals of the Partners Project is burn scar vegetation, which includes inoculating about 175 pile burn scars with native sedges, forbs, and shrubs. I included a photo of really healthy milkweed on the edge of one such burn scar. Let's see. I assisted in the planting, planning, maintenance, and monitoring of the Partners Project site. I've also included a map of just one portion of the Partners site. That's about a quarter of what it is now. And I created the system for monitoring the site, and without spilling all of our secrets, provided a sneak peek at my recording spreadsheet. The blank cells allow for room to add monitoring data for other plant species that might be planted during the 5-year performance period, where we can still plant things and maintain it. You can see unlabeled burn scars to the right of the channel on the map, and these scars are in the extended domain of the California Forest Improvement Program that made way for the Partners Project. In the future, the Partners Project will expand to the southern side of Deep Creek, which is that channel, to include the rest of the previously treated area. Before COVID took hold, I was able to join our stewardship director and associate on a few conservation easement monitoring visits and contribute to writing summaries for conservation easements. A conservation easement is a legal agreement that restricts development and potential uses of property, and conservation easements are forever, which is good. COVID did not really bring many changes to my service, as it was mostly outside. While restricted to the indoors, though, I focused more heavily on report writing, easement summaries, and the KOP guide. And when allowed back in the field, I was frequently joined by Daisy and Sneha. Boy, can those two work. So thank you both for all your help and your support and your friendship. And thank you to everyone for listening to our presentation.
Thank you so much, Sequoia Riverlands Trust. We're a couple minutes ahead of schedule, so I'm gonna make sure I address these questions that were in the chat before we get too far along. So Daniel, and I think this is Daniel from Circle, says he'd like to express interest in getting students from the city of Stockton to engage with you guys on these field trips. He's in contact with the mayor's office and would love to make that link for you so that when the COVID pandemic eases up, we can promote Sierra Nevada visits from the Central Valley inner city areas. So I don't know if you all have Daniel's contact info, but I can absolutely share that with you if you don't. And that sounds like a really good cross-snap connection to make there. And then going back just a little bit, Lauren, there was a question for you if you have a second, if you're still on, from John Dayberry asking if you're doing any beaver management to mitigate sediment and improve fish habitat in your project areas.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, we're actually exploring some low-tech process-based restoration practices for some sites right over the ridge in the Golden Trout Wilderness. But currently we don't have any plans for BDAs or relocations or anything like that in the Fish Creek drainage, but very close, very close.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren. Thank you all for staying engaged in the chat. That makes it feel a little more interactive. So speaking of beavers, next up we have Daisy.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. That's a great segue, actually. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to see so many of you here. And I see Julie just hopped on as well. Thanks for coming. My name is Daisy Shadlick, and I am the River Assessment and Restoration Assistant with American Rivers this year. And over the past year, I've worked on many different projects with the Headwaters team at American Rivers, most of which have been restoration projects in headwaters meadows of rivers in the Sierra Nevada. But I'd like to highlight one really interesting project that we work on in Faith Valley. And this is a wetland meadow restoration project in the Carson watershed, about a half-hour south of South Lake Tahoe. And over the past few years, American Rivers has been working with the Humboldt-Toiyabe National Forest and the Alpine Watershed Group to complete this pilot project for the use of beaver dam analogs, or BDAs, in alpine meadows. BDAs were not previously considered a suitable tool for restoration because they mimic beaver dams, which were thought to impound water, preventing it from flowing downstream. However, studies have shown that this is not the case, and subsequently, BDAs are gaining popularity and clout in the restoration community as an effective tool in meadow ecosystems. And on the left, here's a photo of Rachel and I conducting a beaver monitoring survey in June. She helped field test my work, which I'll talk about in a minute. So beaver were nearly extirpated from California in the early 1900s due to trapping. But in 1911, California Department of Fish and Wildlife passed a law protecting beaver. However, by 1930, the law was revised to allow the killing of nuisance species when they pose a threat to property. And this law still stands today, so beaver are still somewhat threatened. It was not until 2012 that researchers presented evidence that beaver are actually native to high elevations and to the eastern slope of the Sierra Nevada, which includes the Carson watershed and the beaver that live in Faith Valley. Beaver build dams that pool water and retain sediment, which substantially alters the physical, chemical, and biological characteristics of a stream. These structures can be very useful in the restoration of incised stream systems and can benefit meadow ecosystems by raising the local water table, reconnecting stream flow with its historic floodplain, increasing summer base flows, expanding wetlands, improving water quality, increasing habitat complexity, and by just creating more diversity and richness in the populations of flora and fauna. And these are the same desired outcomes of other more commonly implemented and often more expensive restoration techniques. If you could switch to the next slide, please. So I've been involved in this project since the beginning of my term, and it's something that I got really excited about from the beginning. So I wanted to contribute. And to do this, I started learning some of the Esri field software like Collector and Survey 123 to digitize a lot of our surveying materials. So from there, I was able to create a digital survey protocol so that anyone can conduct these surveys without me being there. I created a map to collect spatial data, which you can see on the right. That's a screenshot of our Collector application. And I created a survey in Survey 123 to collect attribute data of each of the beaver structures in Faith Valley. And using these tools versus our old paper surveys is much more efficient. It's much more accurate, and it gives surveyors a better understanding of where beaver are active in the meadow and where their dams blow out seasonally, which has helped and will continue to help inform restoration designs in Faith Valley. And you can go on to the next slide, please. So I am really excited to be staying for another SNAP term with American Rivers this coming year, and I will continue working on this project, as well as working to digitize some of the other materials, surveying materials for the Headwaters team. And if anyone would like to reach out with questions, my email is shown below. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Daisy. We're really excited to have you back for another year, and only got to do 2 site visits this year, but that was a really awesome day in the field, so thank you. Next up, we have Jenna and Caitlin.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. So we had a lot of projects going on this year, and we decided that we were just going to highlight a few of them. So both Caitlin and I served with Tuolumne River Trust, and one of my favorite projects that we worked on was getting to join the Forest Service on some of these threatened bird surveys. So basically what this entailed was going to the Berkeley camp, which burned in the 2013 Rim Fire. And what they were trying to work on was their rebuild, but before they could do that, they needed to make sure they were complying with NEPA mandates and ensure that there were no goshawks or spotted owls that were living in the area. So what we did was we joined the Forest Service for 2 different types of surveys. The first one that we did was a dawn acoustical survey. So this one was for the northern goshawk. And what we did was we went out to the area an hour and a half before and after dawn, and we sat there and we were listening for a goshawk. So this required us to practice identifying the call of a goshawk. And we spent a lot of time listening to recordings on an iPod to make sure we could actually identify a bird if we heard it. And once we kind of felt confident with that, we went and we were just sitting in the forest listening to hear if there was a goshawk in the area. And the type of survey that we did for the spotted owl was called spot calling. So what we did for this type of survey was they set up a first call spot where we would stand there and they would play the call sound for about 10 minutes for a spotted owl. And we were listening to hear if any spotted owl responded to that call. And we would conduct this at several different call spots. So once we finished that one, we'd move about a quarter mile down the road and do a second call spot to see if there was any response. And while this sounds like very exciting, it was actually to ensure that we didn't hear any birds, because if we had heard one of these birds or seen one of these birds, then the Berkeley camp would have needed to change their plan for construction to make sure that they didn't disturb any nesting birds in the area. So we didn't actually end up seeing any birds during this survey, but we had the opportunity to go find a pair of spotted owls that lived in the area and actually get to see the birds, which was really exciting. And it was actually really fun to get up at 4 a.m. and go sit outside and just listen to the birds waking up. So it ended up being a really, really fun project for us. But I'll pass it on to Caitlin for another project.
Yeah, so something that happened a lot in the Tuolumne River Trust was that we work with partners, and that's a really important part of our role and getting a lot of the work that we want done. So two of the partners that we worked with a majority of the spring and the summertime was CSERC and the Forest Service. And CSERC is an environmental nonprofit who we conducted meadow and stream monitoring with. And we measured and observed things such as water quality and grazing impacts. So when we tested for water quality, we collected water samples for bacterial analysis, mostly looking for E. coli. And then we took other quantitative information about the stream sites, such as water temp, conductivity, canopy cover, and water depth. And then we also observed for use or impacts by cows, pack stock, and general recreation by people. And when we observed grazing impacts more on like a micro scale, we measured ungrazed and grazed heights of sedges throughout a line transect survey. And we measured in the beginning of this, well, measurements are taken at the beginning of the season, but we did them at the end of the season. And so we documented the changes in vegetation height on various grazing allotments, and that tracks the compliance of ranchers for grazing laws. And then we used photo points to gain visual observations for a long-term project, and we use these to track the alterations to meadow conditions, such as overgrazing, pocking, stream bank erosion, overbrowsing of shrubs, and headcut progression. And then when we worked with the Forest Service, it was a lot more focused on the restoration aspect of meadows. And so we filled stream channels and repaired headcuts in order to decrease stream gradient and to raise the water table. And this helps to slow the stream flow, which can prevent further channelization and headcut advancement. We also pulled invasive weeds such as mullein, blackberry, and bull thistle, which was really fun, and spread native seeds like blue wild rye, yarrow, and juncus. In addition, the last kind of final thing we did was that we repaired and installed fences to prevent grazing in specific meadows. And this especially occurred in post-restoration projects or meadows with really valuable conditions like fens. And this work just really tried to stop them from their vulnerability from grazing impacts. And I'll pass it back to Jenna.
So one last project to really quickly sum up, I know we're out of time, was our year-long watershed restoration project that was through the CFWG grant. So for this one, we were working on a pretty large plot. It was a multifaceted grant that was aiming to improve habitat for mule deer, recreate mixed conifer forest, and in general, just create a healthier, more resilient forest. So we did mastication, plantation thinning, and reforestation layouts for the Forest Service. So we were out there flagging these units. And as you can see, there were some areas we flagged that were pretty easy to move through and other ones that were super challenging. So it was kind of a fun project to get out there for, and they actually just started doing some of the mastication for this project. So it's cool that all of the work we put in flagging it is actually finally coming to fruition, and we couldn't have done it without the help of Seth and Byron, because they were getting out there in some of the gnarliest terrain helping us flag so that Caitlin and I didn't get horrible poison oak all the time. So shout out to our bosses for helping us out. And with that, we probably don't have time for questions, but thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Caitlin and Jenna. You guys did a ton of awesome stuff. Next up is Marie. And thank you all for being so mindful of the time. We're just cruising right along on schedule.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marie Ring, and I've been serving for the past 2 years with Eastern Sierra Land Trust as the education coordinator. As the education coordinator, I'm responsible for leading the Community Connections program. And our Community Connections program basically focuses on building connections between families and the land through getting people outside and educating them about what's around them. The main programs within the Community Connections are outdoor youth education. So the 2 projects we were able to do this year on that were, at least in person, were Taking Root and the Eastern Sierra Watershed Project. And those are 2 local projects that we partner with local organizations on. We also try to have community events out on the land. Again, the one we did in person this year was our Mule Deer Migration Corridor field trip. And we were able to get 40 people out to learn about the local mule deer and the migration corridor that exists here. And then the big part of what I spent my time doing this year is the Eastside Pollinator Garden Project, which I'll talk a little bit more in a second. As I mentioned, in the fall, we were able to do some of our programming in person. Just a few stewardship days, the field trips that I mentioned. But then a lot of what I was doing this year was converting it as much as I could to a virtual format. So we actually ended up converting Taking Root to a virtual format, which is a monthly outdoor lesson with 3rd graders. And trying to teach them bird calls over Zoom was a fun challenge, but we got it done. And then we've converted a lot of our workshops to online. I started a book club as a way to keep people connected to the area and to nature. We'd meet once a month over Zoom. I hosted a virtual bio blitz and then created some nature scavenger hunts for our virtual education. If you want to go to the next slide. Sorry. Awesome. So if anyone was on our talk yesterday, this might be a little bit of a repeat, but one of the big projects I mentioned that I worked on is the Eastside Pollinator Garden Project. And with that project, we work to help people in the Eastern Sierra certify their garden as pollinator friendly. There's a series of visits. The first initial visit is to just kind of go over the certification criteria and get ideas for their garden. And then there's a check-in visit and a final garden visit where they get their fancy certification plaque that you can see in some of these pictures. And as with everything, we had to pivot this programming this year. So usually in April, we have a pollinator garden workshop that's in person, fun community event, usually get between 35 to 50 people. And I actually converted that to a virtual Victory Garden workshop series. And in that virtual Victory Garden workshop series, I ended up having 6 different speakers instead of and they each had an hour instead of the 20 minutes that they'd usually have. And we had 6 different workshops with 125 total attendees. And then we put them up on YouTube and got 35 additional views out of that. And after this year, there will be 10 new gardens certified, which brings us up to 137 gardens certified total. And you can see in these pictures, we started doing socially distant garden visits. And it was a lot of fun just to get out and be able to connect with people in person. And I'm running out of time, so I'll leave it at that.
Thanks so much, Marie, and you've done amazing work in your 2 years with us. And wish you all the best in your travels back east.
Thanks.
Next up is Mary.
Yes, hello everyone. Thanks for listening today. We're getting through it. Okay, so my name is Mary McDonald. I'm the restoration coordinator at the South Beaver River Citizens League, or CIRCLE, in Nevada City. And today I want to tell you about one project, our pre-restoration efforts at Van Norden Meadow. If you don't know, Van Norden Meadow is a magnificent meadow on Washoe land. It's located off of Highway 80, about 12 miles east of Truckee, right in between Soda Springs and Sugar Bowl if you ski or snowboard. Van Norden Meadow is a really important part of the Yuba River watershed's hydrology, as it's the headwaters of the South Yuba River. Currently, there are areas of the meadow with severe channel incision, as well as hydrological disconnectivity. So Circle first joined a network of partners in 2014 that are committed to the restoration. And I've listed them here. That's the Truckee-Donner Land Trust, Tahoe National Forest, UC Davis, Seebeck Eco-Engineering, Sugar Bowl Resort, and University of Nevada, Reno, and the Washoe Tribe. So it's all hands on deck, lots of stakeholders involved. Phase 1 will aim to address those areas of incision and is planned to be completed by 2023. So my time with Circle happened to align with the pre-restoration vegetation surveys, part of phase 1. This was a huge opportunity for me, coming from working in the foothills, to learn higher elevation meadow plants, which was so much fun. To monitor the meadow, we completed 128 2x5 square meter plots along 7 different transects, because it's such a big meadow, almost 400 acres. Within each plot, we observed vegetative cover down to species level, which involved identifying over 60 different species, most of which are forbs, sedges, rushes, and grasses, save the occasional willow or encroaching lodgepole. And for every identification we weren't sure about, we took samples, and I'd spend office days keying out an identification. So now you may be asking, why would knowing which species of grass make a difference? A grass is a grass, right? Well, beyond giving each species its due respect, we took the extra time and effort to identify species so that we could determine each of the species' USDA wetland indicator status. Having that data will help us understand how the meadow's plant communities are shifting after restoration. So next slide, please. Thank you. So first, a wetland indicator status refers to different categories of species based on commonality in wetlands. So upland species almost never occur in wetlands. Facultative upland species usually do not occur in wetlands, but they may, and so on. So here I've included a box plot of wetland indicator species from Loney Meadow Complex, a group of 3 meadows about 30 miles northeast of Nevada City. Similar surveys were done here in 2016 pre-restoration and 2019 post. The y-axis shows percent cover and the x-axis shows indicator categories. And in each paired set of boxes, the left box is the 2016 and the right is 2019, if you can't see those colors. And once we collect post-restoration data at Van Norden, we'll be able to make something like this with our pre-restoration data. And it's just one way to help us visualize how the plant communities are shifting after restoration. So quick question for everyone still listening. If our restoration goal is to spread out water over the meadow, what kind of shift would we expect to see from successful restoration? And you can just go to the next slide. You don't have to answer. Thank you. So we'd hope to see more wetland, facultative, and obligate species. These photos are both from our Van Norden plots. The picture on the right, or on the left, is more facultative upland, facultative wetland species. Our picture on the right is all wetland obligate species, 100% sedges. And although we still want to see diversity at the meadow, it'd be awesome to see a shift towards more of those plants that love moisture. So that is it, all I have for you. Thank you so much for listening. And I'll be staying on with Circle, so hopefully I get to do more of this. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mary. Really happy to have you back for a second year and excited to see the results of another year of work up in Van Norden. That's a really special place to me and obviously to the Yuba as well. Next up, we have Dorothy and Wes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dorothy.
I'm Wes.
And we served our term with Sierra Streams Institute, which is a watershed science and education nonprofit in Nevada City. And today we're going to talk a little bit about a suite of projects we've been doing with SSI's water quality data on Deer Creek, which has all been collected by volunteer citizen science monitors over the past 20 years.
Yeah, so a major part of Dorothy and I's term was a climate water data project. So basically, SSI over the last 20 years has been gathering nitrate, phosphate, conductivity, pH, and kind of a slurry of other basic water quality metrics. And those have been super useful for guiding restoration or vetting the efficacy of projects. But one thing, especially now that we've reached 2 decades of gathering all of this data, that we wanted to look at was whether in these last 20 years we can pick up on the effect that climate has had and the effect that land use and changes in land cover have potentially had on water quality, as we've seen it in the Deer Creek watershed in the last 20 years. So I did a lot of stuff in R and getting some of the climate data together with water quality and doing some basic statistics. And then Dorothy was involved in doing some really, really cool work in Google Earth Engine, which is a research GIS tool, and she was coding in JavaScript to get a lot of really useful land cover and land use metrics from our water quality monitoring sites in our area. And that's basically the snapshot of that project. And if you want to hear more about it, we're going to be talking more about it later today in a talk later. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the other kind of aspect that we've been working on with this data is just getting it in a place where it's really easy to visualize and where the public can access it easily. And we've done this through a couple different tools. Wes wrote some really pretty looking and fun scripts in R, which is this kind of weird mountainy graph that you see over there. We've also used GitHub, which is a way, kind of like how Google Docs, you can collaborate on one document. GitHub lets you collaborate on scripts, so it's really easy for multiple people to see them. And then also, I worked on uploading a lot of SSI's data to Tableau Public, which is another tool for creating really nice graphs and figures that you don't need to know coding to use. And we think that all of this work is really important so that the public can actually see and interact with SSI's data, especially the volunteer monitors who've worked so hard to collect all that data over the years. And yeah, I think basically what's great about all these programs that we've used is that they're all open source, they're all free to start using. And there are definitely a lot of data sets out there like SSI's that maybe a lot of organizations don't always have the time or the resources to really do anything with. So these are a couple of really great tools that you can start using to efficiently at least visualize and then keep going to do some analyzing of your data sets.
Thank you, Dorothy and Wes. This is a huge project with 2 decades of data. So if people are interested in learning more about it, you will have a full 20-minute presentation starting at 11:45 today. So tune into that if you want to. All right, next up we have Shepherd. Shepherd, I hope that's not your audio issue again. Can't hear you. No. Okay. The Shepherd's going to try to call in, and I can do a brief intro of him while he's doing that. Shepherd's been serving at the Butte County RCD as the conservation project specialist, working on a lot of projects related to post-campfire surveys and reforestation. And so hopefully we'll get him to share in his own words what he's been up to. And while we're waiting, I wanted to share something that I meant to at the very beginning. Today is September 11th. It's the 9/11 Day of Service. And this was totally not planned to coincide. But I think it's a pretty perfect match because you all have given the last 11 months of your time in service to your host site organizations, to AmeriCorps, and to the Sierra. And so just want to once again say a big thank you today on a day that we recognize service in all of its forms, because you are integral to making things happen in conservation and community development.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, glad I got that working. Okay, hi everyone. I'm Shepard. I served at the Butte County Resource Conservation District, or the BCRCD. Over the past year, most of my work has been focused on forest recovery efforts after the Camp Fire, which you can see there now. In 2018, Butte County suffered one of the world's worst and deadliest wildfires, the Camp Fire. In short, it was devastating to the people of Paradise, Magalia, Butte Creek Canyon, and Concal, and the dozen towns spread among them. So BCRCD decided to once again host a SNAP member to help restore these foothill communities. Next slide, please. The quick and dirty of it is that I think by now I've seen more of Butte County than some of the locals have seen in their 40+ years living in these ridges. Over the course of my term, my work has been centered on two major efforts: planting seedlings and offering technical assistance. Next slide. Integral to protecting this region is preventing it from shifting into a brush system. One of the ways BCRCD has directly gotten involved in this effort is by partnering with nonprofits like One Tree Planted and American Forest Foundation. Through the resources provided by these two organizations, I was able to help BCRCD host 3 volunteer planting days, 2 seedling giveaway days, and do a lot of planting myself. This next year is especially exciting too, because BCRCD is planning, with the help of those orgs, to double, if not triple, those seedling efforts with the help of the next AmeriCorps volunteer. And I think that implementation at this kind of grassroots level is really cool, because it helps communities empower themselves and it creates momentum for future restoration projects. Next slide. At a much broader scale of disaster relief, I've been helping BCRCD provide technical assistance to the Farm Service Agency. Following the Camp Fire, FSA was tasked with bringing the Emergency Forest Restoration Program to Butte County, a cost share program designed to help landowners remove dead trees and replant on their properties. Administrative hurdles have made administering the program very difficult, but over the course of my term, I've been able to help the BCRCD keep the program moving. I've called nearly every landowner who's initially applied, and I've helped them push their application forward. And I've surveyed closer to 3,000 acres. I didn't even know that. And through my survey work, I've actually been able to meet a lot of the landowners that I first called nearly a year ago, which has been really cool for me. Luckily too, FSA opened up the EFRP process to a second wave of applicants. So the next snapper is going to be able to meet just as many cute puppers and curious goats as I did. Next slide. I'd like to take a moment to share with you all some of my favorite memories from my time as a snapper. A co-technician showing me her favorite flower. Watching a group of children safely tend a burn pile. My cohort summoning me to a dance party when we all started. Finding waterfalls on a site survey. And getting the whole office to fit into my mom van so we could all grab Mexican food together. Each of us works in an industry that can be incredibly draining. I think, therefore, that it's important for us to recognize the small moments like these. They aren't great or showy, but they're real. And that's the beauty of environmentalism, to me at least. We do what we do because it needs to be done. And I'm glad to be part of moments like these that write a larger, greater story than any of us could do alone. Next slide, please. As I wrap up, I'd like to make a special shout out to Sarah, Rachel, and Jenny for making the SNAP program the awesome opportunity that has been for all of us. And to Tim, Wolfie, and Thad for all the guidance and support they've offered me over the past year of my term. And as I exit SNAP, I'm excited to find opportunities where I can match my enthusiasm for people with my desire to provide help where needed most. Lastly, I would like to express my sympathy to everyone who is endangered by these fires that are raging everywhere in California. Stay safe, everyone, and thank you for your time.
Well, I managed not to cry until then. Thanks, Chef. You did it. Amazing work. Thank you so much. And beautiful words as well. And I think you get the award for best COVID hair as well. Next up, oh, sorry, need a second. Next up is Crystal.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Crystal Ramirez, and I had the opportunity to work for the Inyo County Department of Agriculture, specifically the Eastern Sierra Weed Management Area as a field assistant. And my presentation is on controlling invasive weeds in Inyo and Mono counties. So a little background of the Eastern Sierra Weed Management Area, or ESWMA, is that it monitors new and existing noxious weeds in approximately 39,000 acres of land between Inyo and Mono counties. The overall goal of the ESWMA is to treat and eradicate invasive noxious weeds as possible, or to control these noxious weeds when eradication is not possible. And some examples of the noxious weeds that we treat are perennial pepperweed, which I would talk more in detail in just a few seconds, spotted knotweed, and Canada thistle. My main project was to remove perennial pepperweed from the Owens River and Lower Owens River. And in the picture to the right, I added a picture of the Owens River that I took, and the picture to the left is myself on an ATV treating pepperweed in the Lower Owens River project. So what is perennial pepperweed, you may be asking? Well, pepperweed is a noxious weed that has taken over land in various areas in Inyo and Mono counties. It's really easy for this noxious weed to take over because it has a large underground root system that stores energy during the winter, which allows the pepperweed to grow and form multiple dense patches as early as springtime. Pepperweed also produces large amounts of seeds, which in return spreads the amount of this noxious weed. The seed could also remain in the soil for 3 or more years and can grow pepperweed anytime from 3 years, even after the plant has been eradicated. This is also another main reason why it is hard to completely eradicate perennial pepperweed. And all of these biological characteristics of pepperweed evidently cause conservational issues. As previously mentioned, pepperweed has an extensive root system, so non-chemical control methods are ineffective. And some examples of these non-chemical control methods are like hand pulling or solarization. Pepperweed also has various seed dispersal methods. Some ways the seed can disperse is by wind, being mixed in with hay, or through water, or through soil movement. The seed could also disperse by sticking to tires, shoes, or through animals. In addition, pepperweed is susceptible to fires due to their vast root foundation, and it outcompetes native plants for water and nutrients. Pepperweed also erodes banks near rivers, and pepperweed is also bad for livestock because it limits their forage area. Next slide, please. So I'll take the remaining time to describe more in detail what I did during my service time by talking more in depth on one of the projects that I helped on. And the project is the Middle Owens River Project, which was funded by the Wildlife Conservation Board. And if you look on the map to the left, the red highlighted area are the sites that we treated for perennial pepperweed for this project. So a regular day out on the field for me was to first mix the herbicide in with 20 gallons of water, add surfactant, and blue dye in a tank on the ATV. And we do use a selective herbicide, meaning that the herbicide that we use does not harm the surrounding grasses or the cattle. Once my herbicide is ready, I ride around in a specific site and look for pepperweed to spray. I found that pepperweed likes to be in areas near the river or in areas that look greener. For this specific project, I treated a total of 26.74 acres. Some crucial challenges that the Middle Owens River has is the effects the flooding and the Pleasant Valley fire in 2018 caused. The graph pictured on the right shows the net acres of perennial pepperweed treated in relationship to the year and circuit number. This graph illustrates that the Pleasant Valley fire in 2018 caused a big spike in perennial pepperweed, and it also shows the ability for pepperweed to easily recolonize the area. To summarize the graph, natural disasters such as all the fires going on in present day play a big role in invasive weed management. And that is all I have for you guys today. So thank you for listening, and special shout out to my site supervisors. That's it.
Thank you so much, Crystal. And what Crystal didn't mention is that she just started at the beginning of June. So all this work has happened over the last 3 months, which is pretty impressive. Yeah. Thank you. Next up, we have another person who just began in June, and that's Stephanie.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. Real quick, thank you to Jenny, Rachel, Sarah, and everyone at the Sierra Nevada Alliance for putting all of this together. My name is Stephanie, and I've had the privilege of working with the Sierra State Parks Foundation during my SNAP service term that started this past June as the communication and volunteer coordinator. In 2016, with the help of California State Parks, the foundation funded the restoration of the historic Hellman Ehrman Mansion Garden at Sugar Pine Point State Park. In order to keep this garden maintained, the Volunteer Garden Club was initiated this summer to help with invasive weed removal and general upkeep. Next slide, please. One of my favorite projects while working with the foundation was the Volunteer Garden Club. In order to better understand the importance of this garden to the over 2,000-acre California State Park property, I'll shortly delve into the history of the family that built it and the legacy that they left. In order to receive a full experience of this beautiful park, one must also understand the importance the garden had on each visitor's experience. Isaiah Sworn Hellman immigrated to LA in May 1859 from Reckendorf, Bavaria with his brother. After serving as a clerk in his cousin's dry goods store for about 6 years, by 1865, Hellman had accumulated enough money to buy his own dry goods, clothing, and shoe store. Successful in his merchandising enterprise, he began buying real estate and subdivision properties in the LA area. He eventually owned over 45,000 acres of land, ranging from LA all the way up to San Francisco. Isaiah became interested in the banking business by the late 1880s, and he came to San Francisco to assume the presidency of the Nevada National Bank. After the bank merged with Wells Fargo, Hellman went on to be a leading financier, the president of the Wells Fargo Nevada National Bank, founder and chairman of the Union Trust Company, president of the Bankers Investment Company, regent of the University of California for 30 years, and pillar of the San Francisco and Lake Tahoe social world. Also really quick, this family was incredibly generous. Isaiah gave 4 scholarships of $50,000 to the University of California system in 1917, and translated for inflation today, that's about $2 million in scholarships. Isaiah married Esther Nugas in 1870, and they had 3 children. They lived in San Francisco full time, and in order to escape the foggy summers, Isaiah began buying property on the west shore of Lake Tahoe. Eventually, he owned about 2,000 acres and 2 miles of lakefront. He hired Walter Danforth Bliss to build Pine Lodge, which was completed in 1903. And for all of those familiar with the Tahoe area, this is the same Walter Danforth Bliss that built the Tahoe Tavern, and the same one that built the first railroad from Truckee to Tahoe City. Carl Purdy was hired as the plantsman to design the ornamental garden for the entire state in 1906. Fun fact, but sad. I guess interesting fact is more fitting, but Carl Purdy was scheduled to meet with the Hellmans the week of the San Francisco fire and earthquake of 1906, but due to the earthquake and fire, the meeting was postponed about 30 years. Esther Hellman passed away in 1908, and Isaiah passed away in 1920. Next slide, please. Florence was the youngest of Hellman's 3 children. She married Sidney Ehrman in 1904, and they had 2 children. When Esther Hellman died in 1908, her daughter Florence assumed the hostess duties of Pine Lodge, a role she had evidently relished since the lodge was completed. She ran Pine Lodge like a general, according to one of her granddaughters, hence her nickname, the Empress. Fun fact, according to one of the visitors' memories, the children that visited Pine Lodge were supposedly so terrified of Florence that they would only come to the main house for the formal dinner that was offered every night or for gifts. The Hellman children were not interested in dividing the Pine Lodge after their parents passed away, so a family friend and lawyer suggested that the Ehrmans buy out Florence's sibling share, so the Ehrmans became the sole owners of Pine Lodge in 1939, and much of what we see of Pine Lodge today is attributed to the Ehrmans. The same year, 1939, Florence reached back out to Carl Purdy, and he began the formal garden design. After Florence Ehrman passed away, the estate was left to her daughter, Needing cash to pay inheritance taxes for her mother's estate, Esther sold the Sugar Pine property to the state in 1965 for $8.3 million. Next slide, please. In order to get the Volunteer Garden Club up and running, I sent out a survey to our cadre of volunteers to find the best possible time for all of us to meet. I created a few volunteer e-blasts and kept up with parking passes for volunteers weekly. I'm very thankful to say that I not only developed much more knowledge about gardening than when I started, but I also genuinely made great connections and would even go so far as to say friendships with some of our volunteers. The Volunteer Garden Club focused on the fish pond and gazebo garden. In the fish pond, most of the watershed restoration that occurred revolved around the removal of invasive weeds, grasses, and non-native plants. Next slide, please. For the gazebo, most of the watershed restoration revolved around the removal of invasive weeds and grasses to extend the perimeter of the rock border back to its historically accurate position. The next steps for this project are to begin planting historically accurate plants around the gazebo and in the fish pond, as well as keeping up with general maintenance. I think I'm already going over, but I'm happy to say that, sad to say my service term ends next week. But happy to say that I've already spoken with the rangers and the foundation, and one of the volunteers is going to join me, and we're going to continue gardening. And hopefully some of these historically accurate plants will be planted by the two of us. Thank you. Oh, and there's my email if you would like it.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. You have also just dived right in and really committed yourself over the last few months. I'm super grateful for that.
Thank you.
Next up is Jacqueline.
Hi, can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Hi everyone, I'm Jacqueline Sherman, and this year I served as one of 3 AmeriCorps at Circle, and I held the position of the River Monitoring Coordinator, which, you know, as most people's positions did, took a pretty big turn during the pandemic. But before I get into that, I'll talk a little bit about Circle's river monitoring program and how my position fits into it. This year was actually the 20th year of the river monitoring program at Circle, and it was started in 2000 by a group of devoted community members who were passionate about protecting the Yuba River from dams. And today the program's kind of fortified by that same passion and support. It's an entirely citizen science-based project. We have 45 plus volunteers that monitor 35 sites across all 3 forks of the Yuba, and these volunteers go out and they collect baseline water quality data from March to November every year. So they go out and they collect readings such as water temperature, dissolved oxygen, pH, turbidity, sometimes salinity and nitrates depending on the site, and of course bacteria in the summer when swimming's in full swing. And then another element of the program is deploying 25 temperature loggers that stay at particular sites in the river from May to November, and these loggers are constantly collecting temperature readings, and they're doing that every hour. So the essence of my position kind of lies in coordinating the volunteer citizen scientists and getting all the equipment together every month, and then compiling the data when it comes back. But as I said before, when the pandemic hit, we couldn't really utilize our citizen scientists. So every month I kind of set out on a watershed tour and visited 35 sites. Also thanks to Mary Shannon and Sydney, who helped me out a ton. So my workload definitely multiplied, but on the bright side, it was an awesome way to experience and explore the watershed. And I was really able to see how the composition of the river changed across different seasons and across different forks. And then once I collected all the data, I was able to play around with it and kind of see how the river changed through statistical programs such as R. So I'll kind of transition to the next slide. And talk about the data that I collected at each month. Cool. So at the end of the month, I uploaded Circle's river monitoring data onto RiverDB, which is a cloud-based interactive water quality data site, and it stores all of the program's data from 2000. So it's a really awesome way to look at trend analysis over the years and kind of cross-compare parameters at different sites. So I have a little case study on the slide here. So if you can see the map on the left-hand corner, the river is flowing from right to left, so it shows the geographical orientation of 3 long-term monitoring sites, which are depicted as the yellow stars. And then you can see where Spalding Reservoir is. And then if you shift over to the group of box plots on the right, they show the average water temperature from 2000 to present at these 3 sites. So the box plot on the left corresponds to Indian Springs. So you can see it's kind of stretched out, and it shows natural variability in water temperature throughout the years, which is, you know, healthy for a river. And this is primarily because it's not affected by the dam. It's above stream. And then on the contrary, Lang's Crossing, which is the middle box plot, corresponds to a site that is situated directly below the dam. So you can see the box plots kind of dwarfed, showing small variations in water temperature throughout the years. And we're able to see here how Spalding Dam, which is a bottom release dam, continuously dumps cold water into the site throughout the year, which really deprives the river of its natural temperature fluctuations. And then finally, the right box plot, which is a site in the town of Washington, shows fairly natural variability in water temperature, proving that the river is kind of able to recover as it flows further downstream. Of course, the river monitoring program in this 20-year data set has much deeper and more profound information to offer than this example, but I thought this was a good, easy way to show how I was able to visualize the data and kind of play around with it. Overall, this project that I worked on this year really gave me a great indication of how rivers change, you know, whether it be a dam or a low water year or a high algae year. And I feel like I really came away with a good, solid understanding of hydrology and how rivers fluctuate. As I said before too, COVID really changed the entire nature of this citizen science project and added a different workload to my term, but I definitely came away with a huge appreciation for how efficient citizen science is, and also how fun it is to just have community members collecting data and engaged in local science projects. So with that, I think I'll stop there and see if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Jacqueline. That's a massive amount of work that you took in. You got your miles this past 6 months. Okay, and last but not least, we have Haley.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Haley Reed, and I am a Sierra Field Technician with Trout Unlimited. We've had a lot of projects this field season, but I chose to highlight our greenhouse gas monitoring project in the Sierra National Forest. First, I'd like to talk a little bit about mountain meadows, how they work and their importance. In healthy meadows, grasses and soil filter out sediment and pollutants and store groundwater. This improves water quality and enhances late season stream flows while providing habitat for fish and wildlife. As the snow melts, meadows store floodwaters in the spring, and meadow creeks support high levels of groundwater, which release flows and replenish streams all through the hot and dry summer months. Flowers and plants provide food and habitat for many native species, creating rich biological diversity. As plants draw carbon dioxide from the atmosphere for food and organic matter decomposes, meadows cycle the carbon uptake and emissions through their soil, acting as substantial carbon sinks, holding vast quantities of carbon in their soil. A carbon sink is a reservoir that absorbs more carbon than it releases and thereby lowers the concentration of CO2 from the atmosphere. And as you know, an increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide means an increase in global temperature. Meadows are excellent for climate change because soil is one of the Earth's greatest carbon stores and active carbon sink, as it contains more carbon than all terrestrial vegetation and the atmosphere combined. And photosynthesis by plants with grass and trees also serve as carbon sinks. As great as this all sounds, unfortunately, much of the organic carbon retained in many meadows and agricultural areas has been severely depleted. Meadows lose their carbon when they are degraded by logging, cattle grazing, and activities that compact the soils, which erode streams and deplete native plants and habitat for animals. Human interference is one of the biggest causes of mountain meadow degradation. We started the cycle of erosion when we built roads and trails for logging, mining, and recreation, overgrazed livestock, suppressed fires, and ditched and diverted streams within meadows. Eroded streams and a degraded meadow drain snowmelt quickly downstream, drawing down the natural meadow water table and encouraging invasive species to take over. All this reducing many grasslands' performance as carbon sinks. I've put a couple pictures of a healthy meadow versus a degraded meadow in the top of the slide. So next I'd like to talk about our work monitoring greenhouse gases and why it's important. The important role meadows play in the health of the Sierras is directly related to the abundance of available water during times when water in the surrounding landscape is limited. The physical structure that creates available water in meadows is therefore critical to their existence, and nearly all other ecological values associated with meadows are derived from this. As a Sierra field technician with Trout Unlimited, I was tasked with sampling greenhouse gas stores within 8 meadows across the Sierra National Forest, which is the headwaters of the San Joaquin watershed and flows through the northern San Joaquin Valley, or the California Central Valley. Our first trip took place in June when groundwater levels were high and vegetation was lush. The meadows were brimming with water and life. With the help of my colleague Lauren and Professor Steve Hart with UC Merced, we determined what appeared to be the most hydrologically affected areas of each meadow. We then plotted grid points throughout each meadow from which we would conduct our greenhouse gas sampling. Each individual, well, we had a team of 4, and each individual would have between 4 to 6 plots to sample. We created a seal in the earth by pounding collars into the soil. We would then let them sit for at least an hour as we staged the rest of our gear for sampling. We would then cap each soil collar with a chamber top and take our gas samples at 0, 15, and 30 minutes. Once we were done with sampling, we would take soil temperature and moisture content, atmospheric pressure, and air pressure. Oh, I'm sorry, and air temperature. The samples and data were then processed by Steve and his team at UC Merced to determine the flux of greenhouse gases in each meadow. According to Steve, the meadows seemed to be functioning as expected in the late spring, early summer. Our second round of sampling took place just this past week. This time around, the meadows had been heavily grazed by cattle throughout the summer months. In many meadows, the ground was firm and dry with little to no surface water. This type of sampling is used to assess pre- and post-restoration carbon stores and greenhouse gas emissions, and which meadows are high priority for restoration. Restoration is scheduled to take place within the next 5 years on these meadows. So more about restoration, what this means for the future of meadow health and climate change. Meadow restoration can improve water supply, water quality, and provide important habitat for fish and wildlife. Meadow restoration methods are designed to raise the water table by preventing groundwater drainage through downcut channels. The goal is to reverse the degradation pathway and restore them by raising the streambed elevation and therefore the water table. By restoring meadows and reducing stressors on native species, we can build ecosystem resilience to climate change. I know I've run a little over, but I did want to talk a little bit about the recent fires that are actually taking place right now, the Creek Fire that's going on in the Sierra National Forest. We actually left the meadow the day, or the Sierra National Forest, the day that the Creek Fire started. And although the forest fires that are occurring across California are devastating to those who have been directly affected, forest and meadow fires serve many benefits. While forest fires release absorbed carbon back into the atmosphere, which can contribute to climate change, grass fires help to remove the buildup of dead vegetation and improve the release of nutrients from dead plant material so they can be recycled through the ecosystem. These things combined with warmer soil improve germination of certain native plant species and the renewal of the meadow, and in turn increasing the amount of carbon retained in the soil. Fires also deposit carbon directly into the soil in the form of char that does not significantly degrade back to carbon dioxide. Fires can also open up meadow areas that have been overgrown by forests. They control the encroachment of woody plant species and invasive non-native plants. Allowing wildfires to burn can increase the amount of water stored in the soil for downstream flows. Wetness can increase where fire causes forests to transition to dense meadows. After the fire, the remaining trees and new growth often enjoy wetter soils and less competition. This increases the ability of plants to survive drought conditions. Fire helps rejuvenate meadow vegetation and in turn benefits wildlife for a healthier, more diverse, and better functioning ecosystem. So while a lot of our work in the meadows may potentially be affected by the fires happening in Sierra National Forest, it's still hopeful that it will lead to more ecological diversity and forest health. Well, that's all I have for you. If you have any questions, I know we're out of time.
Thank you so much, Haley. And again, if you want to learn more about TU's work, they'll be doing a longer presentation in about 45 minutes. And we can share everybody's presentations. We will be sharing everybody's presentations on our website, so you can go back and look over them. If you have questions, we can always put you in touch with the speakers as well. So thank you all so much for sharing the incredible work that you've done this past year. It's kind of amazing to see what everybody's been up to, and you've all made incredible strides for your organization. So I know we're running a few minutes behind, so without any further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Jenny, who's going to introduce the Sierra Corps Fellows.
Thanks, Rachel. Good morning, everybody. I just have to give a big applause. It's always so impressive, and I'm so proud of all of our staffers and the amazing work they're doing with all the host site partners. So thanks. It was great to listen to all of that. Again, I'm Jenny Hatch. I am the Executive Director for the Sierra Nevada Alliance, and I just wanted to really quickly transition from our SNAP presentations to our Sierra Corps Forestry Fellowship Program. As I mentioned yesterday in my welcome, this program has been made possible by the generous funding from the Sierra Nevada Conservancy. And a year ago, we hired our fantastic program director, Nicole Lux-Miller, who is a former SNAP member and is currently on her honeymoon. So good reason not to be here. So I'm sitting in for her, but it's also my pleasure because this is a baby of mine to start this program. So I'm super proud to see it off and running. Just really quickly, because I know we're running behind, the Sierra Corps Forestry Fellowship Program aims to increase workforce capacity for organizations and agencies implementing forest health and natural resource management projects throughout the Sierra. The program creates leaders in the conservation field by providing technical trainings and meaningful career development opportunities through the fellowship positions. Sierra Corps was started in the fall of 2019 and is currently funded through 2021. And the mission of the Sierra Corps is to increase workforce capacity for critical forest health management projects in the Sierra Nevada. Our first cohort started of fellows in January 2020. So it's still going on through the fall, and then some of them are in 2-year positions. The program is administered by us and funded through the California Climate Investments via the Regional Forest and Fire Capacity Program and the California Timber Regulation and Forest Restoration Fund through the Sierra Nevada Conservancy and Agency of the State of California. And we have positions with American Forest and the El Dorado National Forest, Calaveras Healthy Impact Product Solutions, American Forest through the Eastern Sierra, and also with some of their regional water management work there. The Feather River Resource Conservation District, the Yosemite Sequoia Resource Conservation District and Development Council, and American Forest. So thank you. And without further ado. Oh, I should say too, we are hiring right now for fellow positions for next year. So check that out on our website. don't know who's going first, so whoever is in charge of that has to speak up. I think that I see PowerPoints are getting put together though.
Yeah, Sarah's just loading the presentation.
Yes, Luis Vidal is up first. Can you guys see it?
No.
Don't see it yet.
It's saying, do you see I'm sharing my screen?
Yeah, we saw your screen for a second. If you need me to share it, there it is.
All right.
Perfect. So I'm Luis. I'm the Forest Restoration Fellow, Sierra Corps Fellow Program on the El Dorado National Forest and American Forests. As the title suggests, my work is all centered around reforestation. This reforestation is taking place on the King Fire. The little fire scar on the left is the King Fire. It burned in 2014. It was almost nearly 100,000 acres. High severity, that was in terms of the total amount of vegetation mortality. When you have large areas of high severity, like the large yellow chunk in the middle there, you have large areas where there's not going to be a natural reseeding or regeneration of a forest, and what you get is instead a large monoculture of shrubs. And this was severely detrimental to both wildlife habitat and water quality. This is a large fire scar footprint in the near northern central Sierra in the El Dorado National Forest, just about an hour west of or east of Sacramento. In the middle, you have kind of the contrast of what was there and what was once there, or what is now there. We have on the left a reforested area, so good news, there is reforestation going on, but there's still a lot of snag and kind of leftover fuel there. And on the right is a forest just nearby that wasn't impacted in the fire, and kind of give an analogous picture of what there once was before. And on the far right, we have baby trees. We have a sugar pine on the left and a ponderosa pine on the right. Both these trees are preferred in the reforestation efforts, primarily because of their fire-resistant capabilities. Both trees have large, thick bark that protect them from wildfires. So that's part of restoring a resilient forest, knowing that fire will return in this area, and we have to account for that and make these climate-smart adaptations that are research informed. My role in work capacity building has been for both the El Dorado National Forest and the American Forest, really just boosting the efforts on the reforestation here in the King Fire. It's a large area, and there's a lot of steps going on. And there's a lot of need for more greater capacity to fill. So with American Forests, we've held some regional climate conversations to get the conversation going on reforestation and climate change, as well as applying for grants, with 2 grants that have totaled nearly $1 million. They're still in application phase. For the El Dorado National Forest, my work has mostly been field, site prepping for reforestation, monitoring, and GIS entry of the data that I collect. And going on, moving forward, continuing to monitor work is currently on pause right now because of a nearby fire. Cone collection, we actually collect the cones and seeds for the seedlings that we plant to give to the nurseries to nurse. Additional GIS work, and a draft, a final report of the whole area. Next slide, please. So going into a little bit more on the field work, there's definitely a need for monitoring and kind of seeing what's out there. It's a lot of seeds. I think I did the math. It could be upwards of over 20 million seeds that could be planted in this area. All of it would be reforested. We're going piecewise. So I'm out there in the field making observations on survivability and the species composition, as well as a lot of other recorded observations that are necessary for future implementation that can address future work. You know, where have things worked, what practices work, and what doesn't, and all these that are important to kind of showcase the variation. And there is a lot of variation that I've been seeing. As you can see on the right, that map just shows one aspect of what we've been monitoring, which is TPA, trees per acre. So the density of trees, of new seedlings that have been planted in these areas. In some areas you have a lot, some areas in the middle, but for the most part, it is pretty consistent. So the Forest Service here and American Forest have been doing a great job in terms of keeping things under control. I do want to briefly mention the climate smart strategies as well. I took a course early on in my term through the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science, NIACS. And through this course, I learned a lot of climate smart recommendations, accommodations, adaptations, and strategies that could take place on the King Fire burn scar as well. A lot of these include the type of seedlings that you plant, and taking into account a lot of the watershed kind of features and aspects of the area. And the final outcomes of this data is that it will inform the silviculturists and other future land management decisions in the area as to how to reforest this very sensitive, large area, as well as promoting a new stand of trees and hopefully a new forest. Fun fact is that giant sequoia has been planted in these areas as well. They're actually doing really well. So it's really exciting to see how those will be in 200 years. I guess maybe not 200 years, we won't be alive, but in the near future. And that's it.
Thank you, Luis. Here's Luis's contact information. Next up.
All right.
Oh, hi.
Hey. Hi, everyone. My name is Marlon Charnot, and I'm a Sierra Corps Forestry Fellow representing the Eastern Sierra subregion with my two place-based partners, the Eastern California Water Association, also known as ECWA, and American Forest, a national nonprofit organization. So the way the Regional Forest and Fire Capacity Program is structured is that the Sierra Nevada Conservancy made monies available through the Cap and Trade Program, and this was to build capacity in the Sierra. So grants were awarded to the Sierra Nevada Alliance, who then identified host sites for different regions, which, as aforementioned, are for me, ECWA and American Forest. So a little background about the Eastern Sierra, since it is so unique. The Eastern subregion, as you can see in the map, is the green sliver in the southeast region that goes from Alpine County all the way down to Inyo County. The ecosystems range from deserts and xeric shrublands to dense forest stands, which, as we like to refer to the program, which is why we like to refer to the program as the Regional Ecosystem and Fire Capacity Program rather than just forest. So what we've accomplished so far for the region. In the first quarter, in an effort to get our finger on the pulse, we interviewed 47 people representing 31 stakeholders from diverse backgrounds for the initial capacity assessment. We interviewed both the Humboldt-Toiyabe and the Inyo National Forest, the Bureau of Land Management, all 3 counties, 6 fire safe councils, and 4 tribes, among others. This was a way to better understand the current efforts being put forth, the available capacity, the needs, gaps, and also limitations. The second quarter focused on coordinating efforts to develop a plan extracted from the initial capacity assessment that would move us forward. This included generating capacity building programs, identifying priority projects, and putting together a region-wide collaborative. These are all works that are still in progress. In the third quarter so far, we have convened for a regional fire and ecosystem collaborative with a group of stakeholders. We also started developing a website as a resource for any interested stakeholder. There will be a project database and grant tracker, among other things, in the site. Next slide, please. In the next steps, we will begin the implementation of the capacity building programs, which include trainings such as grant writing, workshops such as home hardening, and CAL FIRE 101 grant identification. This will hopefully help fill some of the gaps and limitations of the region. We will assist with project development by working with stakeholders to identify projects that are low-hanging fruit and projects that would have large impacts on communities. We are also working to assist to jumpstart the fire coordination positions that are slated for funding in the next year. We will continue to develop a model where fire-related stakeholders are collaborating and discussing solutions to avoid silos. And finally, we need to support and improve outreach and educational campaigns to protect our communities from the next catastrophic wildfires. So some of the highlights and challenges from the program so far. The initial capacity assessment report was really a great way to connect and learn about stakeholders and efforts of the region. This is a really large region with various land managers, which makes it difficult to coordinate efforts and strategize. Secondly, I'm starting to work with an ad hoc biomass subcommittee, which is in the initial stages of development. The group is organizing to find solutions to the removal of biomass challenges we face. Finally, I would like to end by saying that the people of the Eastern Sierra are extremely welcoming and open people. I would like to highlight that there is an incredible amount of work being done, even with the capacity and resources of the region being so dispersed. Last slide, please. And that is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, there might be opportunity at the end of this. Other than that, here's my email. So if you would like to contact me, please do. Thanks for your time, everyone.
Thank you, Marlon. Next up, we have Ruby Tefteller.
Thank you, Sarah. Hello, everybody. My name is Ruby Tefteller. I'm based out of North Fork, California, and the entire Southern Sierra region with Yosemite Sequoia Resource Conservation and Development Council. We're a 4-county regional nonprofit, and American Forest, which is the national nonprofit and the oldest conservation nonprofit in the country. Justine and Brittany are both my supervisors. Brittany on the left, she is an AmeriCorps alumnus, and Justine is a SNAP alumnus along with myself. Both incredible women that I'm very honored to be working under and alongside. I'm here with a really heavy heart today, everybody. The whole West Coast is on fire. The Sierra National Forest is burning. The Plumas is burning, where I was stationed last year, and it's 9/11. So just need to take a moment to recognize that. Next slide, please. Thank you all for showing up today. It's tough for everybody, and I know everyone's feeling things in a lot of different ways today. So with my organizations, I worked a lot this past term to build capacity for both American Forest and the Yosemite Sequoia RC&D Council. I work as a project management fellow, so a lot of the work that I did heavily involved project management and that I'm doing project coordination, program development, working on contracts and agreements. So a lot of the documentation that that gets set in place for projects that we're doing on the ground, and a lot of partnership development with federal, state, local, and tribal partners. So this MOU arrow I have in the middle, it represents a memorandum of understanding, which is essentially like a concrete handshake between the two organizations, basically formalizing the relationship as partners to cooperate and work together on projects throughout the Southern Sierra. My theme today, which I totally neglected to mention, was the capacity to pivot from reactivity to proactivity. A lot of people are talking about that right now, and it's more real than ever today. Next slide, please. So I am based out of the Southern Sierra region. This is the orange area you see on the map. And I am working a lot on the WIP capacity program. I've also been working on some fuel reduction projects with PG&E, and then also a new grant that we were just recently awarded that I will be working to develop with my supervisors, my both organizations moving forward. Next slide, please. So first and foremost, this is kind of one of those reactivity projects that I've been working on, and I've had the honor to, and the great opportunity to start and see these through as a project manager. So essentially, Yosemite Sequoia was awarded some funding from PG&E to do some fuel reduction work on 2 local Firewise communities, actually very close to Oakhurst, where I'm evacuated at right now, and then North Fork, which is our current ghost town, but is still intact, thankfully. So with that, they're 2 pretty small projects, but super important. Next slide, please. As you can see on the left, this is the Bright Oak Firewise community, and a lot of the work that we are going to be doing with that. We're actually working to get contracts set in place now, and we really need to get this work done since this fire is so close to us and these neighborhoods. A lot of it's going to be hazard tree felling, some brushing and thinning and piling and things like that. And on the right side is the Timberview community in North Fork. And they are doing more of a road clearance work, as you can see on that road left-hand and right-hand sides. It's very brushy. It needs some attention. So they're going to be mostly thinning and chipping there in that location. Next slide, please. And then I just wanted to talk a little bit about this new grant. Marlon did a really great job, the fellow before me, talking a little bit about the WIP capacity program. He and I are both developing those programs for our respective regions. He's on the east and I'm his neighbor on the south. And we're doing a lot of capacity building in our regions for organizations and partners to better get this forest health and wildfire resiliency work done. And this AIM program, it's the Action, Implementation, and Mitigation Program. It's funding we just received, Yosemite, Sequoia, and American Forests, from an organization out of Colorado with federal funding. And the plan here is to establish more fire-wise communities throughout the southern region. So it's kind of hard to see on this map, but on the left-hand side, we have, what is it, 6 fire-wise communities so far. We'd like to establish a number more of those through the life of this grant into August of next year. And also we want to build our efforts with the WIP capacity program through this additional funding. I'm very fortunate and excited to announce that through this funding, we have this planning component to build off of our WIP capacity efforts, but also to fund me full-time as a project manager with Yosemite, Sequoia, Resource Conservation and Development Council, and American Forest, sort of working as a project coordinator and manager role. So I have the opportunity to kind of see things through the American Forest lens. We're obviously going to need to look at this landscape that's burning. There's going to be a lot of reforestation work that needs to be done. And with Yosemite Sequoia, we're really looking to do a big planning landscape scale project and pivot from reactivity to proactivity. We have no idea what this is going to look like. We don't even know how to assess it yet, but once we can get back to work and get back to our homes and roll our sleeves up, we're going to have our hands full. But I really look forward to seeing what that looks like. And I really appreciate the opportunity to build my career in this region. I see the need and I'm really excited to take some action and hopefully get us to where we need to be. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for sharing, Ruby, and congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have Thurman Roberts.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Thurman Roberts, and I just want to say hugs and great work down there, Ruby. All right, so with that said, my name is Thurman Roberts. I am the Sierra Corps Forestry Fellow with CHIPS, or Calaveras Healthy Impact Product Solutions. My current titles with CHIPS are Program Liaison and Project Manager. What I'm going to present here is pretty much an overview of my work under these titles. First off, a little bit about CHIPS. CHIPS operates under agreements with Fire State Councils for National Forest, Yosemite National Park, Bureau of Land Management, private landowners, extensive field operations, and down below in the green, major projects is a biomass utilization project. Sorry, my printer's going off. And so, let's see. So I'd like to start with some of my, work with CHIPS as a program liaison. On the right, you could see the tribal outreach and workforce development section. I am so sorry, everybody. Okay, sorry. With the top 2 bullets, I led efforts in coordinating, communicating, and implementation of these efforts. The Paradise S212, or wildland chainsaw training, was our largest training of its kind to date. Come on, let's see. The aim of this training in Paradise, California, was to certify Native and non-Native people for their S212s. S212s for a large cutout of the FEMA hazard tree removal in the Camp Fire burn scar. And in total, we had 48 local people who were certified. Unfortunately, with COVID, that project was pretty much on hold as we can't really coordinate efforts as efficiently with the tribes in the area and the Fire State Councils as well. The one below that is the Washoe tribe we held in March, was the first of its kind as well for CHIPS. And from that job fair, we hired 15 additional Washoe tribal members for our field crews. So a large portion of my outreach to support the workforce development on the east side of the Sierra has included outreach to Intertribal Council of Nevada, Advance, which is located in Lake Tahoe Community College, the Washoe Tribal Workforce Development Agency. And my workforce development effort for our crews on the west side of the Sierra include outreach to Mother Lode job training offices at their Sonora, Amador, and Calaveras offices, as well as the Amador probation. Okay, and the reason for such an extensive approach to workforce development was to bolster our already extensive field operations for the major projects, which you can see to the left. So in the first top two projects are our recently funded projects, our Wildlife Conservation Board, or WCB, and our CAL FIRE grant, which are both three-year-long funded projects. And a short-term goal of mine with my time at CHIPS, beyond my fellowship, is to see both of these projects through completion. A little bit about each one. The WCB Upper Mokelumne Restoration Project is a revegetation and burn recovery project comprised of 1,903 acres of mixed conifer thinning and 12 acres of aspen stand restoration. So it's a pretty hefty project. It is a $1.9 million grant and has occupied pretty much 70 to 80% of my time as the project manager for that grant and that project. The other one is our Arnold Avery Butte Dozer Fuel Break Maintenance and Construction Project. It is a 196 hazardous fuels reduction and 744 acre fuel break maintenance project at $1.9 million, planned for completion by 2024. And I just wanted to mention again, I've been fortunate enough to also be a part of the Biomass Utilization Campus, which CHIPS is a part of, and grant writing to come in the next cycle of grants. Next slide, please. All right. So going back to the WCB, being the project manager for this large project, I spent a lot of my time coordinating team efforts between the U.S. Forest Service, the at Amador Ranger District's office, also working with the Amador Calaveras Consensus Group for planning of monitoring for on the right, you'll see the pre-commercial thin units, which I'll touch on in a moment. But for our WCB, other parts of this project, I worked side by side with a registered professional forester and our field crews. The coordinating efforts for this project began right at the beginning of my fellowship with prescription developments, where I pulled technical prescriptions from the U.S. Forest Service, their fire plans. I developed roles and responsibilities for each member, and developed a field manual for use by our crews in the field. That's where my okay, and then also I use that field binder when conducting walkthroughs for this pre-commercial thin units for contractors that we might utilize to help with that area of this project. And kind of what the process would be is I would walk out there, assess the site with a registered professional forester for any protected species, plants, animals, any LOEs, limited operating periods for the California spotted owl, which ended in August 15th, the northern goshawk September 15th, and any waterways that might need might need to have been scoped out by the Forest Service before our crews got there. Almost there. So quickly to mention on our pre-commercial thin units, it's a 900 acre comprised of 450 acres of mechanical and 450 acres of hand thinning work to be done. And a large portion of that, my efforts within that area of this project, was working with Helen Laughlin of the ACCG Monitoring Work Group of how the prescription that we're going to use in that area affects overall regeneration and kind of the benefits or lack of benefits for the prescription that we're using. And the prescription we're going to use it follows the GTR 220. It's a technical report from the Forest Service. Okay, I'll finish. Which utilizes clumps and GATs. Yeah, so I'll just skip the next two. Next slide, please. So this slide kind of shows some of the work on the left of the work completed by our crews. The top portion shows a lot of surface and ladder fuels which have been removed, and it does correspond directly to the map on the right, which was my first draft utilizing ArcGIS Pro, which has been another benefit of mine during my fellowship. And in closing, I'd like to say, being a native of the Sierra Nevada, I grew up on the Hungalalta Reservation in Alpine County. Seeing all the work being done within the SNAP and Sierra Corps Forestry Fellow, my heart is full. And as science catches up to the traditional ecological knowledge that once was used by the original stewards, we need to listen to the people who live on the land with open hearts and open minds. Last slide. And if you'd like to get a hold of me, there's my information. Please reach out. I love this work and what everyone else is doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Thurman. Finally, we have Katie Reedy.
Hey everyone, my name is Katie Reedy. I'm one of the Sierra Corps Fellows. In January 2020, I began my fellowship with the Sierra Valley Resource Conservation District, or the Sierra Valley RCD. The funding for my fellowship was allocated by the RFFCP grant, also known as the Regional Forest and Fire Capacity Program. The purpose of this grant is to increase regional capacity to prioritize, develop, and implement projects that improve forest health and fire resiliency. After several months of working in the Sierra County, it became clear that the priorities of the Sierra Valley RCD were not consistent with the RFFCP grant that was funding me. So with that, we relocated my position to Plumas County, where my work would continue in Northern Central region. And now my host site is the Feather River RCD. This transition took some time, but it's exciting because the Feather River RCD has so many awesome projects happening. Just to name a few, we have the Moonlight Restoration Project. This is a multifaceted partnership and project and efforts to plant and reforest nearly 4,000 acres of burned land in the next 3 years. Another project that we have is a site called Crescent Mills. It's a wetland conservation area. This area is owned by Caltrans and it's managed by the RCD. It's an ongoing project requiring monitoring and planting, but it has converted an old logging mill into a functioning wetland and valuable riparian zone. So for so many birds, it's really a beautiful area. Another project I find interesting is the Plumas Underburn Cooperative. This is a collaboration between the RCD, the Plumas Fire Safe Council, and the UC Cooperative Extension. The goal of this project is to provide opportunities for local private landowners to have an opportunity to safely use fire to manage their land in an educational and productive way. The project I've personally taken on and spent the most time on is the CAL FIRE California Vegetation Treatment Program, also known as the CAL VTP. Next slide, please. The CAL VTP is a new program. It's a PEIR, or a Programmatic Environmental Impact Report for the entire state of California. When I heard this, I asked, how is it different from the VMP, or the Vegetation Management Program? The VMP is a cost share program focusing on prescribed fire and some mechanical treatments. Private landowners can enter into contracts with CAL FIRE for burning, and then CAL FIRE assumes that liability. On the other hand, you have the VTP as a programmatic environmental impact report. So it's a non-funding program, so project components such as an RCD can utilize the VTP as a form of CEQA checklist for compliance for private landowners. VTP will help speed up environmental compliance for wildland-urban interface fuel reduction, including removal of vegetation to prevent or slow spread of fires between wildlands and buildings. It will also create fuel breaks that support fire suppression activities by providing emergency responders with strategic staging areas and access to otherwise remote landscapes. It also really helps with restoration, an ecosystem where natural fire regimes have been altered due to fire exclusion or suppression. I think we all are very aware of that one. The VTP will analyze environmental CEQA risks on a statewide scale and require standard project requirements and appropriate mitigation measures, which are all described in the documents available on the CAL FIRE website. So what we've learned, just like most CEQA processes, the VTP can be very tedious, but completing it for one project will create a template and make it easier to complete similar projects for the future. The Feather River RCD has completed one VTP for an area called the Heart Cave Project or Ranch in Genesee Valley. We're hoping that we can implement this fall, but with the state of the Bear Fire nearby. It's to be determined. I found it was very intimidating when I went on the website, but organization is absolutely key to success with this. There's tons of online documents, but if you print it all out and create a binder and stay super organized, it's not that intimidating. Next slide, please. At this time, I'll take any questions, but please feel free to email me. I've done other presentations with local RCDs in the region to educate us. We're all learning this process together. So feel free to email me if you have any questions. But thanks for your time today. I know I'm wrapping up the day, so thanks for everything, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. And thank you to all of the SNAP members and Sierra Corps Fellows who shared their work and their passion with us today. It's inspiring to see what you all are doing and how much you care about the work you're doing. We do need to run because we have another session setting up in here, but hopefully we'll see you all at the conference today. If you are joining us today and you don't know what I'm talking about, feel free to visit the Sierra Nevada Alliance website. We're still selling tickets for today's conference if you'd like to join us for some more learning. Goodbye, everyone.